Okay, it looks like we're live. Another episode of Revelation. Our usual intro radio voice guy, Pillbox, is busy right now, so hopefully he'll be able to join us in a little while. Since this is a Revelation hangout, it's going to be mostly me reading anyway, and then Teal and I will talk. She's here with me, of course, if you didn't know. And for some reason on the watch page, it was showing an ad. I don't know why. I thought I had ad blocker on that, but sorry if that was showing an ad. I don't know if it was on anybody else's browser. Probably not. But anyway, let's go ahead and we're going to get into Revelation 14. And I think I'm screen sharing. Does it? Hey, we have one person in chat, or two people. Wow, look at that. And let me know if I think it seems to be presenting screen sharing. So I think we'll go ahead. And as you can see, if I can find which window to click on here, we've got chapter 14 of Revelation up, and we're going to try to get through, what we say, 17 tonight, Teal? You're still muted, I think. Okay, for some reason you're still muted. So, but we'll go ahead and...
Can you hear me?
Yeah, now I can. Yeah, your mute button was on. I don't know what happened there.
My computer was being laggy. I pressed it like 5 times. Yeah, I think you said we were going to go ahead and go through 17.
Yeah, and then that'll leave one more episode. We should be able to finish it up. And you said you have things you have to do next couple days?
Tomorrow and Monday, I will be working probably all day, both days. So
okay,
it doesn't look good for those days. And then
all right,
Wednesday is my birthday. I don't know if I'll be busy the whole entire time, but it looks like Tuesday is kind of the only day. Now, Thursday, even though it's Thanksgiving, I don't have anything until the weekend. So I don't know if you do or not, but I'm just throwing that out there.
Not really, but I'm thinking everybody will be busy. So if Tuesday's the day you can do it, then that's what we'll do. And we'll try and finish that up. And that'll be cool, because then after Thanksgiving, you know, everybody's schedule's messed up anyway. And we'll see what we got going on.
All right. Sounds good to me.
And somehow, you know, we'll just play it by ear like we always do. Read from Revelation 14. There's some interesting stuff right off the bat, but I will try to make sure my page is rolling here, and then we'll go back and... All right. Then suddenly I saw the Lamb on Mount Zion, and with him were 144,000 people with his name and his Father's name written on their foreheads. And I heard a sound coming from the sky. It was like the noise of a lot of rushing water or loud thunder. It seemed to be harpists playing their harps, and they are singing a new song before the throne, the 4 animals, and the elders. No one could learn the song except the 144,000 who were bought from the earth. These are the ones who were not polluted with women, for they are unmarried. They follow the Lamb wherever he goes, having been bought from mankind as a first harvest to God and to the Lamb. No deceit was found in them, because they are flawless. Then I saw another messenger flying in midair, having the ageless gospel to bring to those on the earth, the non-Judeans of every tribe and language and people group. The messenger announced loudly, "Fear God and give him honor, because the hour of his judgment has come. Worship the one who made the sky and the earth and the sea and the springs of water." A second messenger followed. Fallen is Babylon the Great, that made all the nations drink the wine of the fury of its promiscuity. A third messenger followed. If anyone worships the wild animal and its image and takes its inscription on their forehead or right hand, they will drink the wine of the fury of God, mixed full strength with his rage, and will be tortured in fire and sulfur before the messengers of the holy people and the Lamb. The smoke of their torture rises forever. There is no relief day or night for those who worship the wild animal and its image, and who take the inscription of its name. Such is the endurance and faith of the holy people who guard the injunctions of God and the faith of Jesus. Then I heard a voice from the sky say, "Write this, happy are those who die belonging to the Master from now on. Yes, says the Spirit, they will rest from their labors because their actions will follow them." Then suddenly there was a white cloud, and on the cloud sat someone human-like. On his head was a golden victor's crown, and in his hand was a sharp sickle. Another messenger came out of the temple, shouting loudly to the one sitting on the cloud, "Send out your sickle and reap, for the time has come to reap the shriveled harvest of the earth." So the one sitting on the cloud threw his sickle on the earth and reaped it. Another messenger with a sharp sickle came out of the temple in heaven. Then another messenger who had jurisdiction over the fire called out in a loud voice to the one with the sharp sickle, "And pick the clusters from the vine of the earth, because the grapes are ripe." And the messenger threw his sickle to the earth and picked the grapes, then threw them into the winepress of God's great rage. The winepress was used outside the city, and blood came out of it to the point where it rose to the height of a horse's bridle for a distance of 184 miles. Nasty stuff. Anything you want to say first before I try to go back over it a little bit?
Wow, 180 miles all the way up to the bridle of a horse.
Yep.
That is crazy.
Nasty stuff.
Yeah.
So,
you can continue.
Okay. First paragraph, this 144,000 are obviously the same ones from chapter 7. I tried to refresh my memory on some of the other commentaries on what all this stuff means, and everybody, it seems, regardless of their perspective on prophecy, agrees that these 144,000 of chapter 14 are the same as chapter 7, who were sealed at the sixth seal, I think it was, and nothing could really happen until they were sealed. So now we never see them again through all those sealed judgments and the trumpet judgments. And now all of a sudden we see them again, but they're with the Lamb on Mount Zion. And obviously the Lamb is not currently at this point on the physical earth, but that's where John is seeing them. So this is a vision, as a lot of other things in the middle part of Revelation, right around at the end of the trumpet judgments before the bowl judgments. So, you know, that's part of the context that we got to keep into consideration. But they have been sealed on their foreheads. It doesn't say their right hand, just their foreheads. And this is where you get the idea of playing harps in heaven. People take things out of context, but this is the only place that's, you know, there's a couple of places in Revelation about singing and playing to God and all that, but this is where you get the idea of harps. And this is a song, for whatever reason, that no one could learn except these 144,000. And this section 14:4, 14:5, people read it, some of them read it and go, "See, women are polluted," which is ridiculous, horrible exegesis, eisegesis, whichever you want to call it. And the footnote has to do with this, the most basic, simplistic meaning. I didn't want to put a whole lot in there because there's so much controversy over what this means. But it says that they're unmarried, and it's a word in Greek that's used almost exclusively for women, not for men, but it's used here of men. And it could be a reference to a military force. That's the most superficial meaning. The most straightforward meaning is that this was from the Old Testament, which Revelation refers to a lot, about being pure in order to go out to battle for Israel. And the 12,000 from each tribe, some don't take literally, they take as symbolic of the completeness of Israel, and could have some validity in the fact that Paul throughout the New Testament talked about that all Israel will be saved when, you know, in the last days, and that these will be the remnant, the purified. And this is certainly within the realm of the context of Revelation, because it's all about purifying people, purifying the earth, purifying the Jews. And so that interpretation could easily fit. And we have some Old Testament references here to Deuteronomy and 1st and 2nd Samuel, which back up this requirement of purity. Now, some take it other ways, in that, you know, there are some who take this as the church. I don't at all. I think that's not sustainable. But among those who do, they think that it's just talking about purity again. So at least we all agree on that. But the fact that they follow the Lamb wherever he goes and are called a first harvest or first fruit, the problem with saying that, see, this is the rapture of the church or something, or the first martyrs, is that there have been many Christian martyrs before this, obviously through history that's going on today. And so in what way are they a first fruit? Is this the rapture? It doesn't mention anything like Paul enough. And so it seems to be that, I'm sorry, a little distracted with notifications here, but it seems to be that not every instance of first fruits is the same first fruits. Okay, and any more than every instance of saint or righteous or elect refers to the church, because those terms were used for people before the cross. And this is why some people then conclude that there's no dispensationalism, it's all one covenant, and yet the Bible speaks of two covenants and a new covenant and all those things. So trying to keep all those things in balance, I still think this is a future prophecy, and that these are Jews because it mentions all the tribes in chapter 7, and that these are the same people, that everybody who studies the book, there's no real disagreement about that. So everything considered, we certainly aren't going to answer every different objection to every theory, but at least on the surface, it seems to me these are the 12,000 from each tribe, and they are the first harvest of the Jews, so to speak. So that's kind of the way I take that. And their description is of a spiritual purity as well. You could take it as physical and literal, but throughout the Bible, the Jews had this special relationship with God where they are called the bride of God, and they are supposed to be pure and faithful, but they were unfaithful repeatedly, and this was called adultery on their part spiritually. And so this description by almost universal commentaries that I've been able to check is at least, if not, certainly not just physical, if it's physical at all, but mostly by the Bible's context indicating their spiritual faithfulness to God, and that these Jews have not committed adultery against him, and that's why they were chosen and sealed. So however you want to take that, they are called flawless, so they have been perfected. And this is certainly, in one way you can describe that the church is such because Jesus is flawless and all our righteousness comes from him. But at the same time, they are not called the body of Christ or anything like that. You won't find the word ecclesia applied to them in Greek, the word from what we get the word church. And so these are, from like chapter 7 told us, from the 12 tribes. So these do, in my opinion, seem to indicate the remnant, the righteous remnant that are taken out of the tribulation, and that these are, they seem to have been martyrs. There's nothing absolutely certain about that, but they're in heaven. This is not on earth, even though it said Mount Zion, because Jesus has not returned yet, or whether John's looking forward, who knows, but this is when he's seeing it. All I can really say there. Before I go on to the next part of that, did you have anything you want to say, Teal?
No, I don't think so. I'm good.
Okay, and I got a message from Pillbox that he'll be at least a half hour or so. He has some things to do. He may be away from home at the moment. Okay, so then there's this messenger angel flying in midair, having the ageless gospel, ageless good news. And the good news has always been that God would save his people. But it's a message to the non-Judeans, the nations of every tribe and language and people group. This is clearly describing non-Jews. So the first part is about the faithful remnant of Jews, and then this part is about everybody but the Jews and bringing them the gospel. So even in the midst of all these judgments, we still have God being merciful. Even though he's letting out the judgments a little bit at a time, he's still being merciful and giving people a chance to repent. And so this messenger is sent out to give this message, and the message is not what we think of in this church age as the gospel being that Jesus rose from the dead and he fulfilled the prophecies of the Messiah, but this is a message to the non-Judeans, And it says, fear God and give him honor because the hour of his judgment has come. And he is the one who made the sky and the earth and the sea and the springs of water, which, as we've already seen, have been at least partially poisoned. So, first is the judgment, and then this angel comes and says, worship the God who has control of these things. And it's interesting in these days of questioning our earth realm that this kind of a message would be given. This is the true God. This is the message we've been trying to get out to as Christians, that this is the creator. This is the one who has control of these judgments, and you're getting what you deserve, not that God is mean, but that he's come back to clean house. And that's the message for the non-Judeans. The last part of this chapter has to do with the two more messengers who follow. One is talking about Babylon, so we're about to get into that in the coming chapters, and who is Babylon, and that somehow it has to do with spiritual unfaithfulness in contrast to the faithful 144,000. We have this unfaithful Babylon who has been promiscuous, that is to say, spiritually unfaithful with all the nations of the earth, who are about to drink the wine of the wrath of God. This is where you get the phrase in the movie title, The Grapes of Wrath. This and another place that, down farther where it says about the blood flowing. This is the grapes of wrath. This is where this phrase comes from. So this is a little bit of cultural trivia along the way when we can. But this is where we get a more pointed discussion about the mark of the beast. And it says, the third one says, if anyone worships the beast or the image or takes its inscription, which is the etching, as it says in Greek, on their forehead or right hand, as opposed to the 144,000 that had the seal of God only on their forehead. This is forehead or right hand, and it's an etching into the skin. If anyone does that, they will drink the wine of the fury or wrath of God, full strength, undiluted, and will be. And this phrase, kind of, in my estimation, mitigates against either annihilationism or universalism, which says that these people who took the mark and worship the beast will be tortured in fire and sulfur before the messengers of the holy people and the Lamb, and the smoke of their torment rises forever. There is no relief day or night for those who worship the beast and the image and take the inscription. The wording there is pretty specific and repeated, that this is eternal conscious torment. I don't know what else to do with that passage. There's been these, but on the other hand, these are the people, a specific group of people, not all the unrighteous dead. It's saying a specific group of people who took the mark of the beast. Okay, so we can say that if we want to limit it, we can at least say in this passage that it says that these are those who took the mark of the beast. Okay, now in my opinion, the mark of the beast being an etching is probably going to be some kind of offer of an upgrade, a leap of evolution, a transhuman message that everybody's being prepped for, and that it probably involves some kind of DNA infusion. And we're going to see why I think that later on, because of what happens to people's skin after they take this inscription later on. And it's in one of the bowl judgments, but it says that these people are doomed to eternal conscious torment, as it's described here in verses 9 through 11. And no relief day and night. It's the smoke of their torment rises forever, but it says there's no relief day or night for those people. I don't know how else to take that, but eternal conscious torment. But here again, a specific group of people who took the mark of the beast. What do you think?
Well, hopefully Zach will let me talk because he's being really loud. As far as there was something I was going to say about this, but I got a little bit distracted about what you were saying. I think I'm going to have to wait if it comes to mind off. All right.
All righty. Well, like I said, I'm just, I'm not looking to rub my hands in glee.
Oh, wait, I know what it was. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
I was going to say this is why people need to come to Christ now, because during this time period, there is a chance that you could actually lose salvation if you take this inscription. And
Right.
in this time period that we're in right now, you can't lose salvation. Once you're sealed by the Holy Spirit, you're sealed. So
Right.
people need to understand a time of grace right now. They need to come to Christ.
Right. And we do know from what Revelation describes throughout that there are people who turn to God, and they will, and they're, we saw earlier at one of the seals, the souls of those who had been martyred. So evidently there are people being martyred during the tribulation, and they're in heaven. Their souls went to heaven. So there will be people saved during that time, but in my opinion, they will not be part of the church, so to speak, not part of the body of Christ, but righteous nonetheless, just like people before the cross. And that these people are the ones, in my opinion, who are talked about in verse 12 there, the endurance and faith of the holy people who guard the injunctions of God and the faith of Jesus. Let me look down at footnote 2 here for a second. The call for endurance, with reference to chapter 13, verse 10 that we read the other day, is made after a depiction of the price of faithfulness compared to the fate of those who fail or sin. So we always have these parallels and contrasts and comparisons, and this endurance has to do with those who are not taking the mark of the beast, because we just saw what the fate of those people is. They are doomed. Their doom is sealed. There's no hope of changing their mind after this point, who took the seal or took the mark of the beast in their hand or forehead and who worship the beast. Those people are doomed. As soon as they do that, they're doomed. And you don't want to be here to face that possibility, is the point I think Tia was making, that, why take the risk of something that may be, and certainly will be part of deception. So let me go on a little bit here. I don't want to spend too long in chapter 14. And it says, happy are those who die belonging to the master from now on. So again, there are people who will turn to God during this time, and they will have a much happier fate than those who took the beast mark. Then we read about this harvesting of the earth, and it's not the only harvest. But this is not the Battle of Armageddon. Its location is not named here. It will be named at much later in Revelation, but so this is not the Battle of Armageddon here, because Armageddon means the Valley of Megiddo, which is a known place outside of Israel, and this is not that day, as they would say in Lord of the Rings. This is not that day, but there is a very great battle, and I think it says, yes, outside the city. Well, the city is always Jerusalem. Some people would say, because we're going to talk about Babylon, that it must be outside of Babylon. And I can grant the possibility, but it seems to me that this is a more specific in the context having to do with the 144,000 in the first part of the chapter. That is probably Jerusalem. Commentators are split on that. But I think that this is probably Jerusalem. Like I said, I could be wrong. But wherever this is, you don't want to be there, because the illustration of reaping a harvest and the shriveled grapes, that is to say, overripe grapes, overdue for judgment, wherever this is, there's going to be such a bloodbath, literally, that it's, for 180 miles, this is in a valley, evidently, that the blood will rise to the height of a horse's bridle. So it is an absolute, literal bloodbath at that time. Let me go on to chapter 15 then. And if that page will reload, there we go. And I'm not really paying a lot of attention to chat. We got plenty of wrenches, so hopefully everything is going smoothly. It looks like it is. So anyway, let's look at chapter 15. Then I saw another sign in heaven. This is a sign in heaven, just like a lot of other things we've seen, like the woman with chapter 12 with the stars and the sun and moon and so forth. Here's another sign, huge and perplexing. 7 messengers with the 7 last disasters, since with them the fury of God is fully spent. And I saw a glassy sea mixed with fire. Standing next to it were those who had conquered the wild animal, its image and the number of its name, and they held glassy harps from God. They sang the song of Moses, the slave of God, and the song of the Lamb. Great and awesome are your actions, O Master God Almighty. Just and true are your ways, King of the non-Judeans. Who will not fear you, Master, and honor your name? For you alone are clean. All the nations will come and worship before you, because your equitable decrees were revealed. After these things, I saw that the temple of the sanctuary of the testimony in heaven was open. Out of it came 7 messengers with the 7 disasters, clothed in clean, shining linen with golden sashes around their chests. And one of the 4 animals gave them 7 golden bowls filled with the fury of God who lives forever. The temple was completely filled with the smoke of the majesty and power of God, and no one was able to enter into the temple until the 7 disasters of the 7 messengers were fully discharged. Okay, so this is a pretty short chapter. Who knows? We may finish it tonight, but it's hard to say because there's a lot of detail to go over in the chapters to come. So we have another sign, and this is the sight of the 7 angels with the 7 vials or bowls, containers of the wrath of God. Okay, the bowl judgments, most people know them as. And notice these people in heaven. Those who had conquered the beast, the image, the number of its name, those are a specific group of people again. So unlike the ones who took the mark of the beast and worshipped him and were doomed, these people refused to do those things, and they're in heaven, so they've been martyred, and they are singing this song and playing glassy harps in front of this glassy sea mixed with fire up in heaven. So they've been martyred for refusing to take that mark. In my opinion, these are the same ones who will be coming back at the beginning of the millennium to reign for 1,000 years with Jesus, because it specifically will say in that passage that these are they who were beheaded for refusing the mark of the beast. So although it doesn't say beheading here, it does say that the reason they're there is because they refused that mark, unlike the people who took it and were doomed. And the song they're singing is a song from the Old Testament from the time of Moses that Moses composed after they escaped from Egypt and all the Egyptians were drowned. You can go back and read that passage. And it talks about all the nations and that these things are proving God to be just and clean and holy and not vindictive. Of course, the people who took the mark disagree, but that's their choice. And so we leave that scene with the temple filled with smoke. It's open, but you can't go in. You can't see what's going on in there until the completion of these final 7 judgments. Okay, so unless you got something to say, Teal, we can move on. Okay, she's...
No, I'm good to go. We can move on.
All right.
I was answering somebody in the chat, but go ahead.
Okay. All right. Yeah, we can talk more about rapture views when we're all done with Revelation or something, or maybe, do a recap on Tuesday if we get far enough, but we'll see. Let me go on to chapter 16. Then I heard a loud voice coming out of the temple telling the 7 messengers, "Go and pour out the 7 bowls of the fury of God onto the earth." The first went out and poured his bowl onto the earth, and awful, terrible ulcers broke out on the people who had the inscription of the wild animal and were worshiping its image. The second poured out his bowl into the sea, and it became blood like that of a dead person, and every living thing in the sea died. The third poured out his bowl into the rivers and springs of water, which all became blood. And I heard a messenger of the waters say, "You who were and are, the one who is clean, have judged these things as they deserve, because it is the blood of the holy people and prophets that they spilled, so you are right to give them blood to drink." And I heard the altar say, "Yes, Master God the Almighty, your judgments are true and right." Fourth poured out his bowl on the sun, and it was given permission to scorch people with fire. They were scorched so badly that they cursed the name of God, of the God who had control over these disasters, and they would not change their minds to give him honor. The fifth poured out his bowl on the throne of the wild animal, and his kingdom became dark. People gnawed their tongues in agony and cursed the God of heaven due to their miseries and ulcers, and they still would not change their ways. The sixth poured out his bowl on the great river Euphrates, and it dried up to prepare the passage for the kings from the rising of the sun. Then I saw 3 unclean spirits resembling frogs come out of the mouths of the dragon, the wild animal, and the false prophet. They are the spirits of demons that perform signs, and they go out to the kings of the whole inhabited world to gather them for battle in the days of the great God Almighty. There's a quote here, "Look, I am coming like a thief. Blessed are those who stay alert and keep their clothes on so they don't walk around naked and people see their indecency," end quote. When they had all assembled at the place that in Hebrew is called Armageddon, The seventh poured out his bowl on the air, and a loud voice came out of the temple saying, "It has come to pass." Then there was lightning, rumbling thunder, and a huge earthquake. There had never been an earthquake of this magnitude in all of human history. The quake was so big. Then the city split into 3 parts, and the cities of the non-Judeans fell. And God remembered Babylon the Great to give her the cup with the wine of his fury and anger. Every island fled, and the mountains were found no more. Then hail weighing 100 pounds starts falling from the sky onto people, and they cursed God on account of it because it was such an extreme disaster. Okay, so anything you want to say there, Teal? Okay.
No. I'm going.
Okay. Yeah, this takes a little unpacking, but not too much. And we can see here that unlike the seals and even the trumpets, things are just happening rapid fire, it seems. There's no indication of duration or any lapse of time between them, but the way the text reads seems to be bam, 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 one right after the other. And yet at the same time, from all other indications, such as when we are shown the abomination of desolation and so forth, and when the 2 witnesses are killed, this seems to be the second half. And how anybody can survive during the second half with all this is another question. So this is why I don't totally rule out other interpretations. But on the other hand, I'm mostly just trying to read it, and it can fit all at once in the future. So let me try to just go through that. The first bowl is those sores that I mentioned on the skin of the people who took the mark of the beast. I think this is the body rejecting the beast DNA. Okay, he tried to infuse them with this upgrade, and it's eating them up. The people who, it doesn't say where the sores are, but the sores on their skin, like boils, and they're extremely agonizing, but they break out only on the people who took the mark of the beast. Okay, and then it says that everything in the sea died, that the sea became blood. It doesn't say like blood, it says blood like a dead person. And blood like a dead person is just have a different consistency. It's darker, it's thicker, separated from water. It tends to split out, just like when Jesus was on the cross, and they speared him after he had died to make absolutely sure he was dead. They wanted to pierce his heart. And by observation, it says that water and blood came out separately. And this is, I'm told by medical people, that this is a sign of someone who had already died. And so this is what John is describing the waters of all the seas as. And then the third one is on, not just the salt water, but the fresh water as well. And it says the reason for this judgment, the angel says, because people have shed so much innocent blood, the blood of the prophets, that God was giving them blood to drink in return, and that this was their just desserts, because they were shedding blood all this time, and the earth had swallowed all this blood, and now it's giving it back to them to drink, because they have nothing else to drink now. That all of their water is gone and undrinkable. And then after that, and these things are accumulating. All the other stuff that's happened was nothing compared to these bowl judgments, and one right after the other. So the people have no water. They have terrible sores. And now the sun is scorching people very badly, and they still wouldn't repent. And then on top of that, the kingdom of the beast, which seems to be described separately from Babylon, becomes dark, and for whatever reason, this makes people gnaw their tongues in agony and curse God because of all their miseries. And then after that, all this other stuff is still going on. Meanwhile, the sixth pours out on the river Euphrates, and it dries up so that this horde from the east can cross over it. So we know the location. It's in the Middle East, and even the Far East. The Euphrates is separating these people and has been keeping them at bay. Now the Euphrates River is dried up, and this horde is coming over. And it says that John says he saw 3 unclean spirits that looked like frogs. Okay, reptilian spirits, if you want to call it that. They come out the mouth of 3 entities, the unholy trinity, so called by a lot of people: the dragon, being Satan himself, the beast, and the false prophet. So these 3 entities, this false evil trinity, it is visualized that the demons come out of them to lead this army, and they perform these deceptive signs, and they go out and gather the kings together to fight God, which is about, they're so mad that they think they can fight him. They must, that it's delusional or something, but they think they can fight God. And these demonic hordes are just, coming way out of the closet, and they're about to lead these people into battle. And then we have this little warning, like, hang on to your hats, here it comes. And they went to Armageddon. This is the Battle of Armageddon. It's at the end of the judgments. So we had the sixth pour out on the sun, and this is all part of the sixth bowl judgment. This is when you see the Battle of Armageddon. Okay? But before anything happens, no battle's described, and actually we're going to find out no battle actually happens. They're just gathering at this point. But the city, here again, could be Babylon, could be Jerusalem, but the city splits into three parts, and all this other stuff. I mean, all the big cities of the Gentiles fall. And then, speaking of the Gentiles, God remembered Babylon the Great to give her the cup of his wrath. Okay? And we're about to have that described in the next chapter, but it says there were no more islands or mountains at this point. So there's this terrible earthquake of unprecedented magnitude. It takes away all the islands and mountains. And after all the islands and mountains are gone and the cities have been leveled, you got no place to hide. Now we get 100-pound hailstones. And these people have sores on them, and there's nothing to drink. So God is just pulling out all the stops at once, and people are cursing God because of all this stuff. I mean, they asked for it, but, and they think that God is never going to do these things, and people think that the God of the Old Testament is only the mean one. Well, this is the New Testament. And this is the Apostle John, called the beloved apostle, who was writing these things. And he was not a bitter old man exiled on Patmos. This was a vision from God. And I'm thinking somebody who's been having to work in the mines is not, tripping on mushrooms and coming up with this stuff, my personal opinion. But anyway, this is the scenario of all, and I think we are still waiting for the final seventh bowl. Okay, so if you don't have any questions, we'll go on to 17.
Let's go on.
Let's go. Let's ram through this. Nobody wants to stay here for very long. So who knows? We might finish tonight. It hasn't been all that long that we've been on, I don't think.
Right.
Okay, and let me just check real quick. It takes a while for me to click on Windows here, but okay, I wanted to make sure I didn't have any messages of people saying, I can't get in. All right, 17. Then one of the seven messengers with the bowls came and talked with me. He said, here, I will show you the judgment of the great harlot sitting on many waters. So now we're about to meet the other woman, the woman riding the beast. So anyway, let me read through first. The kings of the earth have been promiscuous with her, and the earth dwellers have been made drunk with the wine of her promiscuity. He carried me away in spirit to the desert. And there I saw a woman riding a red wild animal covered with slanderous names and having 7 heads and 10 horns. She was clothed in purple and red and adorned with gold, precious stones, and pearls. She had in her hand a golden chalice filled with the disgusting filth of her promiscuity. On her forehead was written a secret name, Babylon the Great, mother of harlots and the disgusting things of earth. I saw that she was drunk with the blood of the holy people and those who testify of Jesus, and I was aghast at the sight of her. Then the messenger said to me, why are you shocked? I will explain to you the secret of the woman and the 7-headed, 10-horned wild animal that carries her. The wild animal you saw was, and is not now, and is about to ascend from the abyss and then be taken into oblivion. The earth dwellers whose names have not been written on the scroll of life from the establishment of the world will be in awe of the wild animal that was, is not now, and will be. This takes wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains the woman sits upon. These are 7 kings. 5 have fallen, 1 is now, and the other has not yet come. But when he does come, he will only remain for a short time. The wild animal that was and is not now is an eighth that comes from the seven, but is proceeding to oblivion. The 10 horns you saw are 10 kings who have not yet acquired a kingdom, but they will share royal jurisdiction with the wild animal for 1 hour. They will all be in agreement and give their power and jurisdiction to the wild animal. They will battle the Lamb, but the Lamb will conquer them, since he is the Master of masters and King of kings, and those with him are appointed and chosen and trustworthy. Then he says to me, the waters you saw, which the harlot is sitting upon, are peoples, multitudes, nations, and languages. The 10 horns you saw and the wild animal will despise the harlot. They will obliterate her, strip her naked, consume her flesh, and set her on fire. This is because God put it into their hearts to do his bidding and to unite in giving their kingdom to the wild animal until the words of God are fulfilled. And the woman you saw is the great city that has sovereignty over the kings of the earth. That's a mouthful in chapter 17.
Yes,
Okay.
it is.
Let's see if we can unpack that. There's a whole bunch of ways to go, and I'm not going to wade through all my notes on this stuff. People can, if they're interested, visit my website, and there's some links in the description. But I might refer to one more of an outline set of notes, but I want to just go over this first and then look at that to see what I forgot, because I'm just going to go off the top of my head first. The footnote here, while we're down here, the city has sovereignty at the time the revelation was given. It's in the present tense in Greek. Thus, the city had to exist in that day as well as in the future time of the prophetic fulfillment. There's room for disagreement there, but that's my opinion. So let me go back. So we're about to finish the judgments, but first there's this other vision that John had to see. And it's a pre-look at the end, the finality of the harlot riding the beast, the woman on the beast. Okay, you've no doubt heard of that, and it's interesting that the European Union has as its symbol a woman riding a beast and 12 stars around an unfinished Tower of Babel. No coincidences there. And it says that this woman riding the beast, so we have to keep these entities straight. We have the beast, we have the woman riding it, who is called Babylon. Okay, and then we have the false prophet and the dragon. And these things are hard to keep straight, but we have to be careful about that. So this woman has been messing around spiritually with the whole world and has made the other nations drunk spiritually. So they're out of their minds, and they got that way by hanging around with her. Now, John goes to see her in the desert, whatever that means. It could mean the area of Iraq, which is where Babylon was, the literal city of Babylon, the ancient Babylon. Could mean that. There's also an Old Testament reference to a basket being carried out to the plains of Shinar, which is in Iraq, where the area of Babylon was, carrying a woman in a basket, and these two, I don't think they were eagles, but some other bird of prey, vultures or something like that. I forget what they were exactly, but they carry her in this basket to Babylon. Okay, and some people think this is moving what used to be the seat of power of the false prophet in the Vatican out to actual Babylon. You can take that a bunch of different ways. But anyway, he's out in the desert, and he sees this woman riding the beast, and this time we're given the color is red, and it has slanderous names and 7-headed 10 horns. And this is more Old Testament references. This is unmistakable. Daniel and so forth describing these beasts and these succession of kingdoms in various ways, and this was one of them. And she is decked out like royalty. Okay, purple and red. What colors do the Vatican officials wear? Do they have gold, precious stones, and pearls? Yes, they do. The church is not known for this. The true church is not known for this. They were always have been poor historically. There are false churches among the Protestants today, so I'm not just picking on the Catholics here, but I am picking on ancient Babylonian religion. And she has a cup in her hand filled with the disgusting filth of her promiscuity. So, and she also, this is where we get the name Mystery Babylon, but that's not what it says in Greek. In some translations, I like what it says, a cryptic name, Babylon the Great. So her name is not Mystery Babylon, okay? She is just that it's a mysterious name, a cryptic name, Babylon the Great, that's written on her forehead. And not just that name, but also mother of harlots and the disgusting things of earth. So she is the root and mother of all false religion and all evil, basically. That's how she's being described here. So if you hear the term Mystery Babylon, that's kind of a misnomer, because it's just saying that the name itself is a mystery, not that Mystery Babylon is some separate entity from Babylonian religion and even possibly the city. But this is absolutely a description of a spiritual entity, and it is a city, as we'll see. We'll look over here again. But she is the root of all religion. I have 2 videos on Babylon if you want to know the history of Babylon and especially the Babylonian religion. But look at, this is an important point, drunk with the blood of the holy people and those who testify of Jesus. Now, this was not true in history in the ancient Babylon because there were no Christians then. No, Jesus hadn't come. She is an ancient religion, but there's something modern and revived about this ancient Babylonian religion that is guilty of the blood of the saints. Well, that fits the Vatican too. They have killed many Christians as well. Rome, secular Rome and spiritual Rome. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just agreeing. I absolutely think it fits the Vatican.
Yeah, it seems unmistakable to me when I put all the details together, but this is an entity that existed before, because we see all this was not, or is not now, will come. And ancient Babylon spans all of that and will go into the future and is still around today with still wearing the sheep's clothing. But who else could qualify it in all those details but the Vatican? Because she has killed Christians, okay, and yet has been an ancient city. Babylon was a city-state. The United States has never been a city-state. You can say Washington, D.C. and London, but only the Vatican has always been a city-state, and nothing but a city-state is not equated with Rome or with even Rome or Italy. So we do have 3 city-states today, but this one stretches back to antiquity as a city-state and is still one today. That's the Vatican. So I think it's... Go ahead.
I think that this is the very reason, well, at least one major factor of why we have the Dark Ages and them trying to withhold the scriptures from the public and the common people was because Revelation exposes the Vatican as being the harlot.
Right.
I mean, not only that, it exposes their false doctrines all throughout Scripture, but that's really... that if you're part of the hierarchy in the Roman Catholic Church, that's going to be concerning to you that it's exposing your organization.
And that's why when people tell me that the Vatican or the Jesuits made up the futurist interpretation or the pre-trib rapture, I just have to laugh, because they're the last people who want to do that. They don't want this to be future, because it was the futurists who were saying this entity is going to fulfill Revelation, and the Jesuits, of course, didn't exist till 1540, but it's during the time after the demise of Israel in AD 70 that alternative explanations came about, because they believed Israel was never coming back, and so you couldn't take it literally. And that's where the root of a lot of these things are. But futurism does not come from that. And it is the futurists who have been maintaining, especially the pre-tribbers, who've been maintaining that it is the Vatican who is Babylon. And so, I just have to laugh at those claims. But at any rate, what we're saying here is that this entity is ancient and future and is guilty of killing people who belong to Jesus, and yet is a city-state that does business with all the other countries in the world. And Vatican fits that. The United States is not an ancient country. It's the new world, for crying out loud, and really isn't, other than by process of elimination, we have entities from the north, south, and east. We don't have one mentioned from the west, in these prophetic scriptures. And I think that's the only place left for the kingdom of the beast to be. So if anything, the West is the beast kingdom, the beast and its kingdom, whereas Babylon is the false prophet Vatican riding on top of it. That's why I don't think the United States is Babylon or New York or Washington, D.C. or any of those cities, because they're not city-states. Washington is a city-state, but New York is not. But at the same time, United States is a young nation. So all things considered, I think the U.S. and the Western world in general is the beast while the Vatican rides on it. That is to say, the United States is the muscle of the Vatican, and the Corporation of London is the financier, the international bankers. It all seems to fit to me. And also, we should note that this phrase here, the animal, the beast you saw was, not now, and is about to ascend from the abyss. Who did we see ascend from the abyss? We saw in earlier judgments the army of locusts, and that they had Satan as their king over them, Abaddon or Apollyon. This is where there's a book called Apollyon Rising and various other names. The guy is kind of off in his predictions, but there's a lot of interesting research there. But at any rate, we've already seen who comes from there. And so this beast arises from there as well. And some people take that to mean this is also like the two witnesses that are killed at the seventh trumpet. They had to have been active for 3.5 years before that. So also, I believe that this beast that we're just now having described as the beast carrying the woman has been active for 3.5 years as well, in my opinion. Okay, there's all sorts of ways to take this. But anyway, this is, demonic to the core, came out of the abyss. And some people think this is the point where the devil and his angels, the dragon and his angels, are thrown out of heaven. And this is the time when these big woes start, because woe to them on the earth, because he has come down to you with great wrath, the devil's wrath. And so this all kind of fits together to me. But it talks again about earth dwellers whose names are not written in the book of life, and they will be in awe of this beast. So some people say the beast is not a person, but yes and no, I would say, because this is the rise of Babylon, but every empire has an emperor, every kingdom has a king. And as we saw with the head wound, that this is a person. You don't really talk about being in awe of a nation that once was and arose, because look at Israel. They once were and they arose. They came back to life. Some people say for that reason they're the beast, but that doesn't quite fit, because they're going to be attacked by the beast. Anyway, regardless of what's going on behind the scenes right now, this is what's going to happen in Revelation. And we have also Old Testament references to that. But this also, the city on seven hills, in a way, yes, you could describe the Vatican, but there's things that don't fit if you read the Greek carefully. The seven mountains are seven kings. These mountains are seven kings. Some translations take it at they are also seven kings. I don't see the word also in the Greek there. And I'm not aware that it's in any of the Greek family of documents, any of the different tradition. I forget what the word I'm looking for here, different lines of Greek texts that they compare when they're trying to establish what the original was. And this is something that I find conspicuous by its absence, is that there's no word also. So some translations will do it that way, and then some will do it this way, where these seven heads are representative not of literal hills, but of kings. And it says 5 have fallen. By the time of John, 5 had already fallen. One was now, Rome, and then the other has not yet come. So Rome would come back in a way. Okay, and Rome has existed ever since. It never really died, and it's split into two, East and West. We have Eastern Orthodox, and we have the Western being the Rome that we all know, the Vatican. And then it says, when the other one comes, he'll remain for a short time. Well, we have 42 months for the duration of the actual reign of the Antichrist on earth, with with being indwelled by Satan. So that's a short time. And then it says the beast itself that was and is not now. See the contrast? The seven kings, 5 had fallen, one was now, and the other not yet come. This one says the beast was and is not now. So Rome was at John's time, Babylon was not. So that's why I'm saying the beast is Babylon, or the beast is the Babylonian religion, but Rome is, let me read back here and make sure I'm not saying this backwards, because I do that sometimes. The woman is riding upon the kings. Okay? So you can take it either way, I guess, if I look at it carefully, but one is in John's day and one is not in John's day. Okay, so two different entities at the very least are not one and the same. And it says that the beast that was and is not now is an eighth that comes from the seven and is proceeding to oblivion. This is the son of perdition that Paul calls him and all sorts of things. The 10 horns on the beast are 10 kings within that kingdom who have not yet acquired a kingdom. So it had to be people who were future to John, and they will share their royal authority or jurisdiction with the beast for a very short time. 1 hour is a very short time. And give him his power, their power. So they will there will be like 10, what the scenario is to a lot of people think today, is a 10 regions of the world being divided up into 10 regions, and that the leaders of those 10 regions will only reign for a short time and then give their power over to this one emperor, to the beast. Let's see, they will be agreement, give him his power. They will fight the Lamb of all people. I mean, but the Lamb will conquer them since he's the King of Kings and Lord of Lords. That's where that statement comes from. And then he says what the waters are that the woman was sitting on. All the nations of the world, the non-Judeans, the Gentiles. Okay, so she's controlling all the non-Jews. Okay, who would that be again? It sounds like the Vatican to me, this woman riding the beast. Whereas the beast seems more like Babylon to me. But look what happens here. The beast and its horns will despise the woman. So they, at the midpoint of the tribulation, I believe that they turn on the Vatican and destroy it. So secular beast hates religious writer. Okay? And Babylon, the mystery religion, will utterly be destroyed. And she is that great city that has sovereignty over the kings of the earth. So you can, go back over that. Everybody can have a different interpretation, but all I ask anybody to do is pay attention to those differences, to the present tense, which isn't brought out in a lot of translations that try to harmonize it linguistically in English, but I think it can be sometimes misleading because the present tense is important here. And so it seems to me it's saying at the time of John, there was a great city that has sovereignty over the kings of the earth. That would again be Rome, and a city. So however you want to take that, just pay attention to the details is all I can ask anybody to do. Okay. Now, do you want to go on? What time is it?
7:41.
Not that late. Do you want to keep going?
We can. Confused about this. This past
It can be. I mean, this is really involved stuff here in this chapter.
Yes. Okay, so were you saying that that Babylon and the woman are not one and the same?
Yes.
Okay, so how come
Well,
she has?
I'm sorry. I thought I was thinking beast. I'm sorry. The beast is the beast is carrying Babylon. The beast is the beast and the kingdom of the West, whereas Babylon is the Vatican.
Okay, because you had said several times that the Vatican's not the Babylon.
Yeah, I get my B words mixed up sometimes when I'm talking along. Sorry about that. Beast, Babylon. I'm sorry.
Very complex chapter this one is. It seems, at least so far, to be the most complex.
It is. And I hate these pop-up. I put them there myself for convenience for looking at scriptures, but sometimes I scroll over them and they pop up. This is a good time to probably look at this because this is where we draw in also a lot of Old Testament prophecies that may help a little bit. I don't know. But we do know that the abomination happened at about the seventh trumpet, and then we have this ruler, the beast, is described in all these terms you can see here in that bulleted list. And that this is not the same as the woman. The beast is the eighth king that comes from the seven. And in some regards, yes, this is from the ancient Babylon. It kind of splits off, I think, at some point, because in some terms, it's the one that was, is not now, and then other terms is now, and as I was saying, and it does get confusing. I think they started off pretty much the same, and then they split into, the secular and the religious. Hey, Pillbox. We had an echo, but go ahead. Or maybe not. Okay. Anyway, he's here. He's just being quiet right now. Maybe we did have an echo problem, so maybe he's trying to do something about that. But you can see all these descriptions of the beast and all sorts of things from the Old Testament as well, and details about battles. And this is where the Judeans are supposed to flee for 1,260 days. That's the midpoint stuff. And then begins the time of Jacob's trouble, also known as the Great Tribulation. And we already saw about this battle outside of Jerusalem. I take it as Jerusalem. It just says the city. In Zechariah, it doesn't say that in Revelation here, but it says in Zechariah 14:1 and 2 that Jerusalem will be plundered at that time. So all the people who hate the Jews will finally get their wish and see Jerusalem absolutely ruined. And then we have this time of unprecedented suffering, false Christ, and then they gather in the valley of Megiddo. So we're back to Revelation 16 again, although no battle actually happens. And so that's just, kind of a bird's eye view where we're at.
Can you put that link in the chat, or have you already done that?
It's in the description.
Okay.
So they can look that up, or people can look that up later. So we've gone through all this, and the Battle of Armageddon was just staged. It really didn't happen yet, but that was the seventh seal, was just setting up that battle. And then all this other stuff we're into now with the harlot riding the beast. And then chapter 18 is the fall of Babylon and all this stuff. And then after that, we have everything made new, everything bad is gone in the past, and finality. So it's up to you guys whether you want to stop. I didn't know if Pillbox wanted to say something.
Hey, yeah, what's going on? I've been listening for a while now. Yeah, sorry it took me so long.
No problem at all. We missed your intro, but I'm sure you'll have stuff to say later. Do you want us to keep going, or did you want to go on to something else, and then we'll finish Tuesday because that's when Teal said she could do the next episode would be Tuesday.
Oh, well, I got to put it on her then, so she's going to have to tell you to keep going. I have no problem staying a while.
Well, you said that the next chapter was the Babylon Fallen?
Yeah, I think that's of general interest, at least. Chapter 18 forward is when we have the actual fall of Babylon, but we just left with the beast tearing the woman apart and destroying her.
Right.
So.
Right. Do you want to go one more chapter, or do you want to wait?
I'm cool with going another chapter.
Okay.
It kind of goes more with this. I'm sorry?
The good stuff for the last episode.
Yeah, the happy ending we can save for Tuesday.
Yeah.
All right, there will be one. Okay, chapter 18. That I mean, everybody agrees this is really tough to wrap your mind around, but I'm just going through it. That's why I'm not really, I'm leaving it more for checking commentaries and things that you might want to do later, and you in general.
It is really tough, but at the same time, it seems pretty obvious that the Vatican is at least somewhere in there by the descriptions of, the woman and the filling of the blood of the saints and the colors and the riches. Yeah.
Yeah, and the thing is that if the beast is going to destroy her, then the beast can't be her. And even though the beast fits a description of Babylon in ancient times, or a description of Rome, the secular Western kingdom, because we could take it that way, in which case I think it's less confusing. If we take Rome as a secular entity that represents the West, and that Vatican itself representing the East, being the religious part. So it's a whole bunch of ways you can take it. But here again with prophecy, I think it's meant more to be understood in hindsight by the people who are involved. And that yet at the same time, at the end of the book, we'll see that there's a blessing for anyone who looks into this. So here we are. So let me go ahead and go on to 18 then. After these things, that's another one of those important statements we mentioned before. After these things, I saw another messenger descending from heaven with great authority. The earth was illuminated with his majesty, and he called out in a mighty voice, "Fallen, fallen is Babylon the Great. It has become the haunt of demons and a prison for every unclean spirit, unclean bird, unclean wild animal, and all that is despised. For all the nations and the kings of the earth have drunk the wine of the fury of her promiscuity, and the merchants of the earth became rich from the power of her indulgence." And I heard another voice from heaven saying, "Come out of her, my people, so you don't share in her failures or take her punishment. For her failures have piled up to heaven, and God has not forgotten her crimes. Repay her as she has paid you, and do twice as much to her as she's done to you. Mix her a double helping from the cup she served to you. Hand her as much torture and mourning as the honor and indulgence she demanded for herself, because in her heart she says, 'I sit as queen. I am not a widow, and I will never mourn.' So in one day, all these disasters will come, death, mourning, and starvation. She will be burned down because the Master God Almighty is judging her. The kings of the earth who indulged in promiscuity with her will sob and grieve when they see the smoke from her burning. They will stand far away out of the fear of her torture and say, 'Woe, woe to the great city, strong Babylon, because your judgment came in just 1 hour.' And the merchants of the earth sob and mourn over her because no one buys their cargo anymore." Here's a long list: gold, silver, precious stones, pearls, fine linen of purple and silk and crimson, all kinds of citrus wood, all kinds of things made of ivory or expensive wood, copper, iron, marble, cinnamon, ginger, incense, perfumed oil, frankincense, wine, olive oil, fine wheat flour, grain, livestock, sheep, horses, carriages, and the bodies and souls of people. Babylon, the payoff that your soul craved has deserted you. All your delicacies and fancy things are gone from you and cannot be found. The merchants who became rich from her will stand far away out of the fear of her torture, sobbing and mourning, and saying, "Woe, woe to the great city that was clothed in fine purple and crimson linen, and was decorated with gold, precious stones, and pearls. For in only 1 hour, all her immense wealth was desolated." Oops, let me try to roll that down here. "Every sea captain, every sailor and mariner, and all who make their living from the sea stood far away. When they came out and saw the smoke of her burning, they said, 'Who is like that great city?' And they threw dust on their heads and went out sobbing and mourning. Woe, woe to that great city by whose wealth all who have ships on the sea made themselves rich, for she was desolated in just 1 hour. But celebrate her demise, heaven and holy people and ambassadors and prophets, for God has passed your sentence upon her instead." And a strong messenger lifted up a huge stone the size of a millstone and then threw it into the sea and said, "This is how the great city Babylon will be thrown down and never found again. No longer will the sounds of harpists and musicians and flautists and trumpeters be heard in you, Babylon. No more will designers of every kind of art be found in you. Never again will anyone hear the sound of industry in you. Not the tiniest light will shine in you again. The voices of bridegrooms and brides will never be heard in you again. For your merchants were the world's magnates, and by your sorcery they misled all the nations. And in her was discovered the blood of all the prophets and holy people who had been slaughtered on the earth." And here again, that's not the U.S. What do you think?
Yeah, it can't be the U.S. because it's talking about all the blood of the prophets and everything, and the U.S. is too young for that.
That's the thing.
We know that Rome killed Christ himself, and so that's,
Right. So yeah, this whole chapter is about mourning the demise of Babylon and how she had this promiscuity is described in terms of business and merchandise and banking and human trafficking and every kind of vice that is just now, oddly enough, coming to light, that the world's bankers and the Vatican and all these entities have been working behind the scenes, and everybody's finding out about it now. And they've been indulging in all the luxuries she's been giving them in exchange for their souls, basically, and for enslaving the whole world. And this is where you find the phrase, "come out of her, my people." This is not describing the church. It's not describing the United States. It's describing the woman, Babylon the Great, who is, by description, the old Babylonian religion, who the beast has just torn apart. So is not the beast, and not the Western world, because the Western world's too young. So it seems to be the Vatican that has been serving since ancient times as the religious veneer of Satan worship. And now Satan's coming way out of the closet and saying, "I'm done with you. I don't need you anymore. People are going to worship me directly now and openly." And God is just taking vengeance all over the place, using the beast, first of all, to destroy that religious system, even though this is what Satan wants. He's, first of all, destroying the fake religion that has been responsible for the deaths of so many innocent people and spilled their blood. And now, you know, how we saw in the bowl judgments, the whole world was given blood to drink for spilling innocent blood. Now this entity is drinking, you know, being given a double portion or 7 times over, whatever you want to say, for what she dished out. Now she's being paid back. And "I sit as queen" is also in Old Testament. And the Vatican calls Mary the Queen of Heaven. The Queen of Heaven is a phrase that was used in ancient times, for example, for, I think, Diana of the Ephesians, also called Artemis in Greek. Diana was the Roman name. But this Queen of Heaven is a very ancient religious idea. That's why you see all those icons of what they call the Madonna and Child, when in fact those were just renaming, putting a Christian veneer over this ancient Queen of Heaven, Ishtar, all the names you can go through and trace that this is who this was. And the child was Horus. This is not anything out of the Bible, or what Christianity. This is the false religion that God is going to judge. So here again, we see that people try to equate the two, and they're not. Go ahead.
Yeah, and isn't the Queen of Heaven reference in the Old Testament several times?
Yes, that you bake cakes to the Queen of Heaven. That God is chastising Israel and saying you're making cakes to the Queen of Heaven and offering them. Yeah. So yeah, she's sitting as queen. She's telling who she is.
You would think they would be a little bit more discreet, the Vatican.
But look at how long it's been working.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And why they don't want people to read the Bible. And here again, if the Vatican or the Jesuits wrote the Bible, why would they put that in and then try to cover it up and burn the Bible or hide it and try to burn anyone who tried to make it obvious and available to people in their own language? It makes no sense at all for the Vatican to write a book of falsehoods and lies and then punish people for reading it. I don't get that. That's insane. It's absolutely insane.
Yeah, it's just ignorant to think that they would write it when it's exposing them and it's talking about their demise.
Right. I don't get it. And it's interesting, all these people, different groups of people who are mourning the demise of Babylon, because she had her tentacles everywhere. And it says about, first of all, the merchants, and then it talks about the seafaring people, the kings. Okay, it was kings first, and then the merchants, and then the sea captains, and everybody who made their livings from the sea. So every part of the world, the whole world system, which incidentally, world in the Greek is cosmos, which means system or arrangement. And that's not the physical world. That's not the earth, which we get the word Gaia, but that's a twisting of what it meant. But it means, the word is Gi in the Greek, and it just means the physical earth, whereas cosmos means the arrangement, the world as we use the world of people. And this is bit by bit explaining each aspect of Babylon's tentacles that are now mourning the fact that it's all gone in a very short space of time. You may or may not take 1 hour literally, but you get the idea. Go ahead.
The cosmos is representing like the human-made system. Is that what you're saying?
The world of people. That's kind of the idea then. It just, the literal meaning is arrangement or system.
That's interesting because,
yeah.
I mean, it makes you think of the show Cosmos. Some sorcery going on there.
No doubt. Of course, Russia uses the term cosmonaut. They say cosmos, but theirs is probably just a Greek derivation, because I've noticed, even though I don't know Russian at all, I've noticed I can actually read a little bit of it because I know Greek letters. They have a lot of Greekness in their alphabet. It's a different language family than our Indo-European branch. So they're more of the Phoenician side, I think that's the right word I'm looking for. But anyway, different language family, and they have these Greek-like characters in their language. And I can kind of sound out some words that way. And they would say cosmos with a K, of course. That's the way the Greek spells it, with the K sound. They don't have a C sound that makes the hard K sound. But anyway, so it's not always nefarious, I don't think. But it's interesting that the Western world, the English language groups tend to use the word astro instead of cosmos. We do more the star word. When we talk about what's out there in the sky, it's actually a little more accurate because we're using the Greek word for star, which is aster. Astronomy, that sort of thing. That's what a light in the sky was. So, different meanings, different roots, but how people use it is a whole different study. So anyway, interesting little comment in the chat. I just happened to look up. Somebody said, Mr. Rich Bob says, Cyrillic, if I pronounce that right, was invented by 2 Greek brothers. I can't vouch for that either way, but that is a language group, I think. I know that word. I just don't know much about it other than that's a different language group than we're in. And so they have a different succession or evolution, if you want to use that term, because language does evolve by usage, and people write differently. And how you write, if you're chiseling something in stone or in a clay tablet, is going to make you make characters more angular. And then if you write it on parchment, you're going to be writing with your hand and write more curvy. So that's the evolution of language written, at least. So anyway, just getting back to the text here, this long list of things, it just leaves no stone unturned. And it's all about the fine things of earth, whether it's food or pearls or gems or metals, and it includes this human trafficking at the end. So this is what Babylon was into, and people are mourning the loss of this. So it's no wonder, even though they've somehow survived to this point, if we're going chronologically, which is another big if, they are absolutely the people who have been involved and indulging in these luxuries with her. So of course they're upset that this is gone, and they know they're hosed at this point. They know that their jig is up, and God is about to put a final stamp on his judgments here and come back and set up shop and put an end to all this corruption. So Babylon being paid back for what she's done. And she talks again about that great city that was clothed in purple and crimson linen and gold and precious stones and pearls. And all these people mourn her loss, and that this is so final, nothing will ever go on in that city again. So I have the idea that at least during the millennium, this city will remain in ruins as a lesson and a remembrance, especially since there will be people born during that time, the millennium, that won't remember any of the world the way it used to be, the way it is now. So whoever this is, inside of her was found the blood of all the prophets and holy people who have been slaughtered on the earth. So it isn't even just the holy people, the blood of the people who followed Jesus, everybody's blood. So this does stretch back to antiquity. All the innocent people, from babies to seniors, whatever, all the innocent people that have been put to death unjustly are being laid at Babylon's feet here. So let me just look forward just a second to, we're going to get, next time we're in chapter 18 here. So next time we'll get into praise in heaven, because everything's done at this point. This is when we're going to see Jesus come back, and then they try to actually do the Battle of Armageddon. They have only gathered and no battle is described, so it doesn't sound like anything happened, but Jesus is going to come back and wipe them out. And then we have the millennium, the thousand. That's what 1,000 years is. The millennium is the Latin word millennium, annum being year and milli being 1,000 in Latin, and that's where we get that term. And then there'll be one last rebellion, if you can believe that. Then the final judgments of the living and the dead, and then the remade heavens and earth. So I guess we will do that next time if you want. And so we've gone over the worst of it. So any questions?
No, but it seems that the both of the battles are just attempts where it never really plays out as a battle. Jesus kind of just wipes them out both times, it seems.
Right. Well, the one, the main last battle was the one where we had that bloodbath, but that wasn't even the end of the tribulation by then. So, but people, it'd be kind of hard to form an army even of any consequence after all this disaster. It's like, what are people thinking? They're just blind with rage is all I can say. They're just blind with rage at that point. So we're going to get into this part at the end, this section. If you look at that link in the description about the books, the prophecy integrated. So, I guess that's it. Have you guys been looking at the chat? I haven't really looked at it. Let me stop sharing.
I see Chalian Cats out there. God bless him.
And I will share.
Sergeant Victoria, of course. That's what her last name means. And James Higgs Boson, of course. All right. Mr. Rich Bob. It's funny you said Millie. That reminds me of the rapper Meek Millie. So they call him Millie for that, I guess. Yeah. So I didn't know that's what that meant. Look at that.
Wow. Hard to say as far as the name goes.
Well, they all have, that makes sense, though. They all name themselves Latin names because the music industry is basically satanic.
True that. Nobody doubts that. It's interesting that they say music will not be heard in Babylon anymore.
Yeah.
But there will be music. It just won't be in Babylon. So I just kind of was rolling the chat. We got a little echo there. Rolling back the chat a bit. I didn't really see a whole bunch of activity. I don't know if we had anybody watching or, very many people. I couldn't tell you.
Well, we've got 8 thumbs up and 18 thumbs down.
Wow, that's double what we got yesterday. Somebody got angry. Somebody was hating.
Yes. I can't imagine.
I'll just say it right now to the chat that I called it yesterday. There will be no hit pieces made on this chat. They don't have the guts to. If they put a hit piece on this chat, they would regret it. They know better. That's what the body of Christ does. That's why they get hated on. They were expressing this away from the Christians at the conference and talking about how it's going to be less Christian led, supposedly, I guess. Especially it must have really bothered them that it was Robbie, who's a professed Christian, and the main speakers that everybody cared about were pretty much the ones that were Christian. Yeah, anybody that wasn't a Christian pretty much bombed their speech anyway. So that probably has something to do with it.
You think? Yeah, this is not a happy topic, even just the stuff we're covering that isn't usually getting votes down, but the fact that we're getting them now that we weren't before. And after yesterday's hangout, that was yesterday, right? I'm like, wow, time is flying so fast. I guess maybe I don't, because I'm old, but yeah, no coincidence that we had that little fire and brimstone hangout yesterday, and now we've got all these people watching. But hey, they were watching, right?
Yeah, I always think if you got more thumbs down than up, then you're doing something right, because people don't like truth. So
yeah. And they call themselves truth seekers, which is the big irony. you know, truth seekers. And when you see truth, you want to slap it away and stomp on it and burn it with fire. It doesn't make
Yeah,
any sense.
I actually, I'm gonna have to take off because Zach's getting a little antsy. So,
Oh, okay.
I
All
appreciate
right.
the hang. I had a really good time. I might step back in if I can get him to, chill out. I mean, he's not upset or anything, but it sounds like he may be
Okay.
getting there if I don't spend a little bit of time with him. So,
No problem at all. We probably will chit chat for a while, and even, like as always, any hangout will, even if we shut down, we'll probably leave the back window open. So,
all right, I will be
All right.
around hopefully later on. All right, bye bye.
thanks for being here. Catch you later.
Bye bye.
All right, Pillbox, what's up?
Remember the last time we went over these photos that my dad got when he went to Rome and took me with him, and it was too long ago for me to remember. And I always remember looking at these things and realizing
Okay,
that I pretty much walked around this area that's going to be absolutely annihilated as a child, so that I can relive all the things later after it's gone. I'm sure in my memories. So apparently this place is not going to exist anymore. So
Right.
it's pretty amazing. It certainly was the greatest Antichrist, I guess. So makes
I'm not
sense.
sure. Hold on a second. Can you untime out Nathan because he just said hello? I don't think that's really. Or he said good evening. Let me see if I can undo that. Well, maybe it's already been done because it says put user in timeout. I don't want to do that again. All right. Well, I don't seem to be able to undo the timeout. I don't know why, because I'm using Rand's account. For some reason, I can't. I mean, he just said good evening.
I could try. I'll be right back.
All right. Yeah. I don't know why I can't. Let me try with my account. Let's see. No, it just says put user in timeout. I don't want to do that. I don't know why that can't be undone. All right. Sorry about that. It was just we're a little trigger happy these days. Can't really blame us, but I did not know you cannot untime out somebody. Sorry about that. No harm, no foul. Anyway, yeah, we were just doing, for anybody else who just got here, we were just doing a coverage of Bible prophecy. We've been doing a whole series, and we're hoping to finish up on Tuesday because that's the next day that Teal will be able to be with us on panel. And right now, we're probably just going to chit-chat for a bit. Pillbox went to see if he could do anything. He'll probably be right back. I'm pretty sure he's going to find out he can't undo a timeout either. So, yeah, that happens. I mean, sorry about that. Anyway, yeah, if people are behaving, no matter who they are, I don't care if they're here. It's just that, like I said, we've gotten a little trigger happy these days. But that happens, battle fatigue, whatnot, whatever you want to call it. It's been a time of very much frustration spilling over on a lot of fronts. And this is kind of our last refuge. And we had a lot of trouble the other day with people, especially even today on comments on that video that we did yesterday of people just wanting to throw more crap at us. Not to say anybody came here tonight to do that. I'm just trying to give a little context for the quick trigger. So, nobody meant anything, I don't think, by it. We're just, trying to keep it peaceful is all. So hopefully 5 minutes will pass and Pillbox will come back and we'll get a little conversation going. Yeah, late joiners, we did finish, we went through, let me look back on my screen here if I can find the right window. We went through from chapters 8 through 18 of Revelation. and went over the worst of the judgments to come. And then next time it will be a much happier story, at least for people who repent and turn to God. We just saw Babylon the Great being destroyed and annihilated and finalized, and all the corruption of the world meeting its end. And now, next time, like I said, hopefully Tuesday, we'll be able to see that God Jesus is going to finally actually literally come back to the earth and set up shop. So that's what we have to look forward to. And people can, of course, look ahead, and we'll do that Tuesday. So hopefully, I don't know, I think Pillbox is back. You're back on panel?
Yeah, and the fact of the matter is Chow Yun Cat does not even trust most flat earthers, and a lot of Christians he doesn't trust. I'm going to go ahead and use that real quick.
Yeah,
it is bad. Let's see, right about, should work. There it goes. Okay, yeah, it's good. Ching. All right. Yeah, Chow Yun Cat doesn't trust anybody actually. So, that is just a safety precaution. It's like banning somebody out of the club for about 5-10 minutes. No big deal. Nathan's gonna smoke a cigarette, put something together on the stove. Whatever. 5 minutes is not gonna hurt him. He'll come back. That's the thing, is that obviously as long as it's not mocking, we got mocked last night, so that was pretty funny. And it's all good lately. The good news is Chow Yun Cat is adapted. And the fact of the matter is he's right, though, because at this time, for the first time in a long time, there has been a bigger separation. So there is a bigger separation. I have friends that don't come around either because of the separation. And I have atheists and agnostics and all these other groups of people I've been talking to. They've been separated. Even some Christians have been separated. We've been separated from many Christians. We used to have groups of bigger than this, back in the day, right? We've shrunken down. We've had to reform. And so that's expected. And I'm certainly not mad at him at all for that, though. So that's going to happen. And we are in strange times. We have been backstabbed a lot. We have been lied to repeatedly about a lot of things. And a lot of things is the disrespect and how we're isolated amongst the entire rest of the world, like our Bible said we would be. So it is expected to be more the same, right? But we have to still defend ourselves. We had to have a standard. We finally had to draw a line and say, okay, this is extreme. Like our standard is we don't like people hanging out with porn bombers. If you think that's high at all, you don't realize that we are the most liberal people in the world. The Christians have the highest tolerance. We are the only tolerance. We have to put up with garbage like that. And it's, it's like normal. It's like, if we don't put up with garbage like that, it's not normal. Like, you have to put up with that. So it's clearly what it is, guys. It's very simple. Let me narrow it down. It's two things. There's two belief systems in the world. One belief system says that you need to be saved, and the other belief system says that you're going to save yourself or help heroes save you, or use heroes. So it's going to be man, or it's going to be your creator. That's the two belief system world. So a lot of these people think they're saving themselves, and that's where we get that massive separation. And I know, because I've been there, just like we were all Globers, and they don't realize it. They think, how do you know? Well, we've already been in your shoes, just like the flat earth. When the Globers say, you're closed-minded. No. We've already been there, noobs. Sorry. That's the whole point. When somebody figures it out, they get out of that cult, or they get out of that false doctrine, or psychologically, insane ideas. Shoemaker Lever 9, you name it. We remove ourselves from the world and realize that we need to be saved, and we come to the only truth. It's the Bible. So we have a right to have a high standard. And if you notice last night, a lot of people that we had to fight off were so-called Christians. So that's the point. We are attacked by everybody, including ourselves. And that's why Chow Yun Cat did what he was supposed to do. You can't blame him. Okay, go ahead, Paula.
Yeah, that's the thing, is we've been putting up with anti-Christian rhetoric, anti-Bible rhetoric for years, just in flat earth, let alone outside of that before this. I mean, every place you go, awake people, asleep people, doesn't matter. They all say the same thing. The Bible is false. It was written by Jesuits who didn't exist till, 1500 years after it was finished. It was written by Rome. It was written by somebody else than what it says. And we have evidence to debunk all of those claims. And yet people go on like we never said anything, like they can't hear a word we say. And many of, not every, but many of the big flat earth channels started out bashing the Bible, started out bashing Christians, and started out dividing the flat earth community. And we're just supposed to forget about it and be one big happy family and put up with constantly having our faith trashed, our Bible burned in front of us, our Savior put back on the cross. And we're supposed to be okay with that. We're supposed to be okay with the double standard and with the constant hypocrisy against us of, like, for example, what as we mentioned yesterday about the heckler against Dean Odell. They said, well, he was just, she was just speaking her mind, and yet wasn't Dean Odell speaking his mind? That's the kind of thing we deal with all the time, and I don't know why people can't see that, or whether they just don't want to see it. I don't know. I'm not going to say what their motives are, but I can see what their actions are. And no matter who it is, we're dealing with a very strong push to get Christians who stand on the Bible and dare to have an opinion that is not popular to be trashed by pretty much everybody, atheists and anti-theists and astrotheologists and worshipers of Thor, people who don't care one way or another, agnostics. Everybody is united against Christianity. They don't pick on each other as much as they pick on us, and they don't suddenly care about unity anymore in Flat Earth when there's Christians around. They have to get rid of us. They have to heckle us. And somehow we're the problem that must be solved, then we have to be gotten rid of. But the problem is, yes, they can throw us out of their clubs. They can throw us out of the mainstream. But as we said yesterday, mainstream is a bad thing for truth. Historically, if you look back on it, if you believe in history, if you don't, I can't help you. But if you believe in history, the pattern has been whatever goes mainstream is a corruption. And the truth is always marginalized. And that's what we're seeing now in Flat Earth. So I think that's pretty much the gist of yesterday, other than, needing to vent and let it out for a change, other than instead of always being the restrained one and always being the ones that reached across the aisle. Now it's our turn to, since we're being pushed away, there's no sense in sticking around with people who don't want us around and give us lip service with one hand and stab us in the back with the other and pretend to be friends in public or enemies in public while they're friends behind the scenes. And we just had it. That's all it is. We just had it.
Yep, and so has Chow Yun Cat and a bunch of other people. So it's all good. That's how we got here in the first place, ladies and gentlemen. You already know that your trials and tribulations in your life are what made you get forged into that steel sword. That's the reality. And a lot of you are swords, and some of you are other tools. So, and each one of them had to be forged. And that's the reality of this. And you've already gone through this before. This is business as usual, and it's going to get worse. My goodness, I'm the optimistic one. You have to realize out of this group, I'm probably the most optimistic. I get told by everybody around me, hey, there's no way this isn't in the very end times. I just talked to somebody today that's part of the group who told me for about 35 minutes about all the stuff that's going on. I don't put a lot of research into the satanic deceptions that are part of media and things related to people that are popular or famous. Yeah, that's the word, famous people. I don't pay to, but when someone was explaining all those things, it's so disgusting. I don't want to even know it all. I don't want to understand how the satanic system works. And it just seems to be like this separation is just fits right in line. After all, this awakening to the flat earth was just a massive high, and everybody that got onto it was either high or it meant something to the Bible. It's either, you have two options here. So there was people that also, I'll admit, I got absolutely excited. I probably took it because a lot of people said they were sad too. A lot of Christians, you notice there's a big mixed crowd in the Christian community, but it seems like everybody else that hasn't made it to Christianity just really like the high so much that we want to find out what else we can get high off of. When can I find the next big conspiracy? Well, that's the problem. Once you hit flat earth, you've kind of run out of all of them anyway. And two, the only thing that's next is the rest of your life, which is the Bible. That's the rest of your life. That's the only thing that is left. And by the way, the Bible is the original flat earth book. It's very simple. So you got to take 2 + 2, get your 4, and run with it. And that's how this works. It's very simple. And the Christians are the tip of the spear. That is the absolute reality. And we're still in we're still in the infant stage of that truth anyway. And I thank God for that. I thank God. Like if I said somebody that, like I did all last night and the night before outside of the internet, when I mentioned flat earth to somebody, they go, huh? Yeah. So that's great. Thank God. Truth has not gone mainstream, and people keep mentioning that word. No, it's not even close. And Rob Skiba did a great interview the other day that explained his viewpoint. It was nice and cordial. It's not going to go anywhere. It's going to reach 150,000 people. You think that's going to change the world? 150,000? They're going to forget about it by next year or something. This world is just going to keep doing what it's always been doing. There's nothing new under the sun. So we're already here. And let's see, Full Armor, what's going on, buddy? Victoria, of course, Sergeant Victoria. Mr. Bob, yep, let's see.
We still have an echo?
That's another thing. Right now, I don't hear it.
Okay, cool. Go ahead.
Yep, so we're here, and it's not going to be mainstream. There's the echo.
Oh, man. All right, I'll mute again.
It's no, it's impossible. There's no way. I know from years, and you get these headphones, and they're really quiet, and they have a button on them. They put the button on your headphones so that you can push a button to play songs in the middle of the night when you don't mean to, or something. It has nothing to do with like a useful object so that could work, so there'd be no echo. This is 2017, but apparently we went to the moon 60 years ago. That's a good one.
Let me try something else. I do have a volume control. Does that help?
I don't know. I guess we'll have to test it.
Okay, I just turned it down.
Yeah, a little bit. I didn't hear that. Yeah, I didn't really hear it then. I don't hear my echo anymore.
Okay, I'm just turning it down.
Which
I figure maybe the
definitely annoying.
mouthpiece is picking up. Is it back?
No, I don't hear an echo. No, I think it sounds clear. Actually, don't hear it.
Awesome. I think I just needed to turn down the volume because I've got such bad hearing. I have it turned up, and I thought, well, I better turn it down. And I'll move the mic a little bit farther. I can move it up a bit. I don't know if that'll help.
We're not even, here's the other thing. We're not even talking about the deceptions. So when these people tell me about this stuff, I go, oh my gosh, I just don't want to hear any more about it. It just gets worse and worse and worse. I just want to do my job. I wish I could just be a farmer and just put my hands on the ground all day and not worry about all this garbage and this disgusting war and this. I mean, that's the thing. That's the reality, is that you're going to realize this is a work. You're going to realize eventually that this is not like you're having fun. Oh yes, you can certainly get those moments where it's either really bad and really interesting and crazy and good, but it's a job either way. It's a real truth job, and that's the reality of it. And not everybody can do it. If there's such thing as truth, there can't be more than one truth. So this word truther is a fictional word. There's no such thing as a truther. There are Christians, and then there's the rest of the world that doesn't like Christians for some reason, or has a problem, or talks bad about them, or mocks them under their breath, or out in public on the internet. Boy, that's a lot different than just being in your house and going, oh my gosh, these Christians think they're so. And then you go out. We just wait for these attacks. We've been waiting and waiting for years and years and years. And what that's called is filling your ammo bags. And you get your ammo bags filled like basically like slaves slowly taking from the people above them that are mistreating them. And that's kind of what Christians have always been. That's why we have to go through these trials and tribulations. So we're good to go, trained up, made it to the next level, have plenty of rounds. And the reality is that you've proved it for us. That's the point. If the world wasn't gathering to attack Christianity, do you think we'd maybe think otherwise? What do you think the point is? Duh. And it's everywhere you look. And this entire flat earth movement is based on exposing the Jesuit order of the Catholic Vatican Church that is the recipient of all the money in the world and guilty of most of the deaths. That's the Antichrist, literally mentioned not only in Scripture, but as we see what they are literally, everything they do is anti-Christian. So people that continue to call them Christians obviously have that disconnection. You can't put 2 and 2 together anyway. You can't read. So if you can't read, how can I expect you to come to the truth? That's why I had to tell this person last night, you have to care about the truth. You can't pretend to for that high. Go ahead, Paula.
Yeah, I was just going to say that here again with the Jesuits, it's like, the Bible, we just got done describing here in Revelation the woman riding the beast as being very well fitting the description of the Vatican. I was like, why would they write that? They wouldn't write that. And like I said, the Jesuits didn't even exist when this was written in 95 AD, and the Jesuits were formed in 1540 AD. So they would have to say, well, okay, not the Jesuits. Not that 1500 years off is very sloppy or anything, but okay, the Vatican. But here again, the Vatican would not describe themselves this way, and they would not try to, like I said, burn people at the stake for putting the Bible into the language of the common people instead of hiding it in Latin later on. So it makes no sense that the Vatican or the Roman Catholic Church or Constantine or the Jesuits, who both lived after the Bible was long completed, would have anything to do with its content. It just doesn't make sense at all. But as you know, we're living in a time when sense is irrelevant. It's a virtual reality, so nothing has to mean anything, and you can make up any logic you want and call it rational, I guess, and try to discover your game world. Go out into your game world to discover rooms that may or may not be there the next time you go in. And maybe there's a glitch or a cookie or something you find in a certain spot that opens up a fake room, and that's all good in a virtual realm. But in this realm, it doesn't work that way. People think it does, but I'd welcome them to prove it. But it's like, you know what? If this is a virtual reality, what's the point of exploring? What's the point of the scientific method? What's the point of wondering why you're here? If it's a game, you were just here, whether you like it or not, and you're part of the simulation too. So it's your reality, and it's just a hopeless philosophical mess.
That is the absolute devastating truth, 101%, and it's frightening. That's why I say I don't know what to call these people anymore. And these are my friends, because, when I started back here 5 years ago, I was even hanging out with atheists until one of them got real. What do? They always get really sick. They always go too far. Right? They'll go way too far of it. And that was good, though. See, at the time, it was a big shock. And I can't believe that these people attacked me. But then it's like, oh, wait a minute, I just got separated. So that's the point. You got to get separated. And now up to here, I still have an open arms. This Christian community, is the only group that's completely open armed. These other groups just hate. They're the ones hating. They're always hating about the same thing, which is the Bible, and then blaspheming it and saying and telling us what it means. That's all they want to do is tell us what it means. But they can't read simple languages. They don't understand the Greek or the Hebrew or English. So they're malfunctioning at 3 different languages, and people think they're smart. That is the great deception. It's much more than flat earth. Much more than flat earth. Flat earth is a huge piece, but it's much more than flat earth. It's a whole, God didn't, that's just what I realized. Daniel 12 has to witness to this claim right here. Daniel 12, I don't know if he's here right now. I know he was here yesterday, but bro, there's no way God had me figure out some things for 30 years. And so many, can't get into it, for 30 years studying these things in more ways than I can explain in 5 or 6 hangouts. Okay, so some of it, there's no way it's for nothing, right? Everything in your life you're doing for a reason, right? You had to learn from these things. Well, we've learned from these things. It's not just the flat earth. That's just a very big piece of the puzzle. But there's about a few dozen other pieces of the puzzle, and they're all biblically required, and it's the Bible, and it only leads to the one truth, period. And that's how this works.
Yeah, we all we paid quite a price for where we are, and it's been very difficult for some of us, especially lately, to walk away from friends that we've been hanging around with all this time because we didn't want to believe what we were hearing about them. We didn't want to believe it. And even with some of the recent, I don't want to call them hit pieces because they weren't mean. They were just presenting evidence that seems convincing. But I hesitated, especially because of the character of some of the accusers. That's a big deal to me. You have to have credible witnesses. And so even though a lot of credible people were saying the same things, I'm like, you know what, publicly, I can't say anything because, I get ripped at the very second I talk about secondhand evidence. There are people that were on that panel the other day that called me knowledge slanderer because I took the word of people who said that he did certain snipings. And then on that panel, they all thought it was funny that he had used to do snipings and had been very good lately. They thought that was hilarious, I guess. But the fact is that in doing so, they admitted that sniping was going on. And so then I was forced to believe what the people were saying. I didn't want to reach that conclusion. I wanted to think the best about people, especially some who had been coming to my channel, to my Bible studies. And it's like, there's hope for this person. And I'm glad that, they're taking an interest in Bible studies. It's a good thing. I did not want to believe these things, but when you see them on panels together, people who used to fight in public, people who apparently know or
crimes.
knew. Well,
what about the fact that crimes were committed in public? These are not even crime. It's not just it's a biblical crime, of course. These are the crimes that these people sign up to and say is their moral law. So put your money where your mouth is. That's the reality.
Yeah, I mean, we put up with an awful lot over the years of people doing stuff we didn't really think was a good idea. But we would get over it and we would let it go and we would give them another chance. And even though they weren't really doing that for us, a lot of people over the years that were not cutting us the same slack. And we waited till the last minute to go, okay, which way are you going to go? What is true? What is false? We need to see convincing evidence. And then we finally see it and go, man, I can't give them any more slack. I wanted to, but I can't. And we're losing even more friends than we lost before because they hate the Bible. Even if they say nice things about us in the Bible and to our faces, we know what they're saying when we're not around. And I know what they're saying about my friends, the Christian friends I have, that they're saying about my friends. And I can't turn a blind eye to that anymore. And I hate having to say that.
Right. Amen to that. No, it's absolutely true. And that's the difference, is that we're willing to accept the truth. That's the whole point of this. But here's the thing for you guys, and I know that the people in the chat, most of them are going to know this, but I'm not only the most hated flat earther on the flat plane of existence, but I'm also the worst Christian. So you're the bad Christian. I'm the worst Christian, Paula. but let's look at that. Let's put my name to the test, and let's see how I compare to them. Because my friend Jibby slanders me all the time and gets upset, and I can say this publicly because it's true, whether he likes it or not, because he does these things publicly and he slanders me. Guess what? I'm still his friend. For the first time in my life, I met somebody that can slander me and is such a weirdo that he can be my friend at the same time. But guess what I draw the line at? I draw the line at the fact that he drew a line too. And his line that he drew was exactly where my line was drawn. And I look at Jibby's line and I go, well, you are kind of weird and you constantly insult me and it's very annoying, but you have that line drawn on the sand that you're not going to accept these kind of criminals. And that's why I like Jibby and put up with his stupidity all the time. And God bless him. But that's the reality. Don't tell me I'm not tolerant. People look at me and think I'm some kind of, psychopathic fire and brimstone on the street threatening people saying you're all I've never told anybody they're damned in my life. I have told a few people to see what it says, what happens if you mislead a child, and it says tie a millstone around your neck and cast it into the sea. I've told a couple of people that. That's not me judging anybody. But we have an extremely high tolerance. And not only is the worst Christian on the flat plane of existence tolerant to Jibby, so is Paula. And they have known each other for years. And so she has to put up with him too. So for us to be this tolerant and put up with these people, don't tell me that I have a problem, that I'm a bigot and there's something wrong with me. I put up with everything because none of that bothers me. I don't care that people want to make fun of me and this and that. That means I'm right. So God bless those guys that want to keep. And there's more than, of course, Jimmy. He's just a chip off the old block. Let's get real here. But the fact is in a private chat, I'll send him a message right now and I'll say, wake up, dummy. Where are you? And he'll answer. So that's the reality of it. And I'm sorry, but that's the truth. So don't tell me, and I absolutely like Jimmy, but he needs to get right with Christ. Make no mistake about me. Don't think I'm sugarcoating this fact of reality. He better get right with this truth because he does have a serious problem. And that's all I got to say about that. What do you think about that, Paula?
Yeah, it gets painful after a while, though, because I see him tearing you down. I see him tearing down other friends of mine and believing known liars over my friends instead. And sometimes you just have to keep your distance. Then that's all you can do. You can still be friends, like you said, but can't hang out like you used to, because this is what I hear going on, not just him, but other people too that I've used to know that would go around and they would be nice to me, and we'd have half decent conversations face to face, online, I guess you can call it that. But later you'd find these same people just ripping the Bible and saying things that you proved couldn't be true, like the Jesuits writing it, for example. That's my go-to example, because they didn't exist till 1540, like I said. And the Bible, we have pieces of it from the latest piece, of the original language. It's like from the 2nd century AD, and we have like Isaiah and some other of the Dead Sea Scrolls that go back 1,000 years BC, and yet they think that the Jesuits, who weren't until 1540 AD, somehow wrote it. I was like, I don't know what to do with people who will go around saying the Jesuits wrote it after I pointed this out, and no one has refuted it. And then the go-to fallback is, well, we can't believe anything more than like 400 years ago. And I'm like, well, then what are we doing? What are we talking about? Nothing is knowable. Everything is just where somebody decides to draw an arbitrary line for no good reason other than personal preference. Somebody else may have a good family history that goes back farther. That doesn't matter. And it's so frustrating, and I can't even talk about spiritual things anymore with those people, because I'm an evidence person. I'm a logic and reason person. Yes, we have been lied to about a lot, but not everything, because otherwise we'd know we were lied to. How do you know you're lied to if the truth cannot be discovered? If everything in the past is a lie, then you don't even know that the Bible is bad. You didn't write the Bible. You can go back 400 years, which is longer than your lifespan, so you still don't know. And yet these people, it was good friends otherwise, and like you said, where we draw our line, it's painful to sit and listen to them do this day after day and tear down your other Christian friends just because they're Christians. And I just can't do that anymore. So I'm just sitting here. I sit here and find out elected or my channel, because then I don't have to watch them do that. I don't have to listen to them do that, because then it would just make me more hurt and angry.
Well said. Very well said. Let's see what we got here. I got to get a pot down right quick, if you can hear that. Here we go. Let's put that down. Ding. Okay. Let's move on here. But here's the thing. What I got to tell other people about this fact is, guess what? Sorry, everybody else, but this is the only flat Earth group in the world, except for a couple of exceptions out there, like Rob Skiba, who, if he's doing his thing, and if he's honest about it, he's really, which I think he is, and I like him. I've mentioned him many times. Good for him. God bless him. Hopefully he continues to, keep up the good work. But these other groups, all these other flat earthers aren't real flat earthers anyway. How often do you hear them say, I know the earth is absolutely flat? There's other ways. I mean, how often do you hear these people even say they know it's flat? I know it's flat. I bet Victoria knows it's flat. That's going to be my guess. Let me just shoot in the dark real quick. Charlie and Cat, I bet he knows it's flat. James Higgs Boson, I think he knows. And we sure as heck know. Where's that Daniel 12? Holy moly, he knows it's flat earth. Let me tell you right now. Guess what? He's damn right about that. Excuse my language, ladies and gentlemen. Daniel 12, though, is right about something. And boy, oh boy, he will tell you. He will tell you this, buddy. Let me tell you, Daniel 12, you step in front of this boy, you're going to get a problem if you tell him the earth isn't flat. And that young man knows it's dead flat. Just like blood on a flat earth always finds its level. Daniel 12 will tell you the earth is flat, and he's absolutely dang right. Dang right. He is 100% right. Only him and a few other people can say that. Isn't that awesome? That's the gift that we have that nobody else has. You know why I know that? Because they all debate. And guess what I don't do? I don't debate things I know for a fact. I help people understand those truths that are willing to understand truth. And you have a requirement and a qualification to want to know the truth, let alone desire and have the will to pursue it. If you don't even have the want or the desire or the need to possess the truth, then you've already failed. I'm not going to help. How could I help you if you don't care about the truth? I mean, how many idiots do we come across that say you're closed-minded? When no, like I said, we've already been there, and we've already been atheists, and we've already been seekers of false gods, and we've already been seekers through ourselves, and we learned that it was all garbage and it's all of Satan. And not only are we Christians, we're the only flat earthers on this flat plane of existence, and we only have the right out of all the people to even use that in our title. All those other people are fraudulently using the flat earth because they have no foundation of truth anyway, and they're not using it out of the Bible to begin with. They hardly ever mention it, maybe under their breath once in a while, but that's a gift they don't even have. And not only do we have that gift, we know the earth's flat, we have a lot of other gifts to put right on top of them. And we don't need a model. We know the truth of this world, so we don't need cartoons. These people are still arguing about cartoons. Guess what? We don't need that BS either. And as we noticed lately, a lot of people have turned into idiots because of this map conundrum. Yeah, the Christians weren't there worrying about it. Only the false teachers were, the ones that hung out with, guess who? The same people. So there are many, many fakes around us. Do not take these words lightly. The ones that we encountered last night, just a little chip off the block. Isn't that nice? We got so many people to run through. What a wonderful truth this is, Paula.
Yep, and that's the thing is, if we've mentioned many times before, is no matter what the actual shape would ever turn out to be, this isn't going to ruin us because our paradigm isn't going to change. It doesn't depend on things like that. It depends on a past event that can't change, and it's that Jesus rose from the dead, and that's not going away. And so our anchor is there, and it's not like people were shocked to learn that there was no space. Just like the movie clip I played yesterday, Galaxy Quest, you got to watch that if you haven't seen it because it's got so much good conspiracy stuff in it where, especially around that scene at the end that I had a clip of, where they say he's explaining to this naive alien that it's all fake, we're all actors, and he's a spaceman, it's all fake, we're all actors. It's a lie. And this is just so ironic. But the point is that as Christians, our paradigm didn't get shattered, with the shape of the earth. It doesn't happen to us because that's not where our anchor is. That's not where our ultimate reality is. And that's why we've been trying to get back to our focus of where the ship is supposed to be going, which is who's the creator, not how. And so as long as we're doing that, I don't even care, there's inconsistencies in the way people practice what they claim to preach, whether it's Christians or not, but especially my concern being Christians, is a lot of people are saved, I'm convinced of it, that believe other things about the Bible or whatever it is about science or the world that I think are wholly inconsistent with what the Bible says. But if they're mostly concerned about who made it, and they can unite around that, would be a force to be reckoned with. And yet, at the same time, I have little tolerance for even my spiritual siblings who do the Bible harm by twisting it so badly to make it conform to the world. I have a big problem with that. I had it for decades past in the evolution creation debates, where people would say, no, the Bible has to be garbage because it says the earth was made in 6 literal days. And the Bible is garbage because it has miracles, and we scientific-minded people know better. That's always been an issue for me, and even among Christians. There are old earth creationists. There are, out-and-out evolutionists that are Christians as well. And it's, not determining whether they go to heaven or not. That is determined by faith only in Jesus who rose from the dead, and you accept God's reconciliation and his offer as adoption. That's the dividing line of all dividing lines that people can't cross and call themselves Christians. But consistency is a big deal too. Truth is absolutely what we're supposed to be about. It's being absolutely not just looking for truth, but being happy to find it and telling everybody else that we found it. And some people have a problem with that, and I have a problem with them.
Amen to that. Wow, absolutely. 100 right there. Victoria said it right there. Victoria usually has the best comments, but Wayne Reck and Chow Yun Cat, Vic, James, Scott, you have the tool now You have the tool. You see these other people and all these hangouts, rather they're shills for Satan or just complete, idiots that woke up to a flat earth and got so high they couldn't land down on it. And they're still looking for the map to figure out where to go with it. And they're just standing around looking at this giant tool on the ground while the Christians are carrying it. And we're moving on to stage 5 and 11 and 42 and 96. And we're past, when they're on stage 1, staring at the tool on the ground, the flat earth, going, we got to get a map first. I don't know what to do. I've got to get a map for it. Yeah. Well, it's funny. I mean, I don't need a map or a model. I just need the Bible. And that's the reality. And so they're lost in the sauce. Yeah, we have everything. It's right here. That's the point. And I have this tool, and I got a big tool. It is like a rocket launcher on my shoulder, and I will carry it wherever I go.
Absolutely. Yeah, we have a map that, and people keep saying we're going to find the way out of this place. We're all enclosed in a fishbowl or whatnot. We're going to find our way out. I'm like, the door's right here. I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father by me. I am the gate. I am the door. How many ways can Jesus say, this is how you get out? And nobody wants to hear it. Well, you can believe that, but of course you really can't believe that, because then you think you're right and everyone else is wrong. You think you're better than everyone else. Has said no Christian ever, but that's what they assume. And they themselves think they're right and everyone else is wrong, and that they think they're better than we are. But hypocrisy aside, the fact is that Jesus said he was the way out. I'm just telling you what he said. I didn't say I was the way out. We didn't say the church was the way out. We said Jesus was the way out. And so if they don't like it, well, we know why. And if they want to run around in their virtual reality and play the game forever and never come back out of the basement, that's their right and their choice. But you know what? I don't want to stay there.
Wow, look at that. Well said, Paula. Raw 5069 in the chat. God bless that man. One of the original people that held his hand out to me when I first came on to the internet about 4 years ago, a little over, maybe almost going on 5 years now. Raw 5069 was the first real Christian in every way that was really legit, had a heart of gold, and was literally open-minded to anything. And he held out his hand to me, and that's Raw 5069 right there in the chat. And God bless that man. If Rand was here, he would absolutely call that gentleman out as well. For sure. Rand Campbell has known Raw for probably, 6 or 7 years, who knows. So just remember, guys, that guy should have a wrench and a half. So don't be worried about that guy. And if he says something that doesn't make any sense, make sure, just realize that you might have misunderstood it, and I will cover for it later. So whatever you do, he's good to go. Yeah.
You want a wrench? Use wrench.
Absolutely. Yeah. Right. Roger that. Awesome. Yeah. Perfect. Right there. Yep. And, tool now, it's not for everybody. Not everybody has to have it, but for those who need it, it's here. It's just like there's some power tools that I really like to have, and there's things like jack stands that are really great that you could buy. You put it underneath your car, and you pump up the jack stand as a hydraulic press. That's a great tool, and I'd love to have one. And I can't do those major jobs without that tool, and that's what the flat earth is. The flat earth is a major tool. It's a dual all, and many of the earthly ways, the earthly deceptions, understanding the things about what man has lied to us. It is it's actually a beginning truth. You see, that's the first thing you're supposed to know when you're born. So it's the kindergarten of the truth. It's a wonderful truth. Absolutely. That's why it's so important. It's supposed to be known when you're about 1 or 2 years old, just to understand, hey, little Tommy, Billy, Sally, you're walking on a flat earth. And there's the water above you, and God is above, watching on you. Duh, that's the first thing we're supposed to learn in life. The point of this deception, we've gone 20, 30, 50, 60 years deceived. So now we're going, oh my goodness, the first thing I should have known in life, the very first thing, of the shape of the earth, and the basic that what we've always worked on the premise of, but never realized because of the deception. So we've had to retool our minds. And then you're given that big tool that you're supposed to have when you're born. 3,000 years ago, it wasn't a tool because there wasn't a deception like this. So It wasn't relevant. You didn't need this kind of thing. You didn't need anything. Just of course, 0 + 1 is 1. Yes. The amount of curvature at 1 foot is the same at 400,000 feet, is the same as 5,000 miles. It's always 0. So shouldn't that concept of zero be known right off the bat? That should be the first thing you learn. And that's what flat earth is. It makes you go, oh my goodness, now I know what zero means. There's no curvature to this earth. It's a massive deception. Now all the puzzle pieces are going to fit. And right now, you know, that deception has hit like a perfect home run over the face of the flat plane of existence. That's what it's done. I mean, bam, right in the face of humanity. And it has not gone mainstream. Thank God.
Right.
I'd be out of a job. I'll tell you that right now.
Right. Yeah. Like I said, everything that goes mainstream gets corrupted. And by pushing this mainstream, they're just going to control it like they control everything else. And they're just coming out of the closet with it. And you know, I can't prove anything about people directing traffic behind the scenes or getting their marching orders from somebody, but all I can do is what they themselves admit, which they did in that video the other day. They admitted all sorts of things just by being together and approving of each other. And Christians, the right thing to do is to come out from her, my people. If I may, you know, everybody else takes that out of context, I might as well too. Which is that the Bible says, be holy because I am holy, God says. And holiness is it's a balance between holiness, which is separation, and unity, which is peace. Those two things balance each other. And there are times when you can get along with people, other times when you have to separate. And so this is what Jesus told in that parable about the wheat and the tares, that they would be separated at a certain time when the time was right. And that's what we're studying in Revelation, is the separating of the wheat and the tares. And it's painful separation. But the wheat, not for the wheat at least, at least in the church age, we don't have to go through all that. But the point being that there are times when you have to pull away, even if you lose your friends. And nobody is out of more boxes than some of us are. I mean, being a Christian, first of all, being a young earth creationist even separates you from other Christians. Being a flat earther separates you from other Christians. What else? Being a woman, etc. Separate. You know, I could think of every box you can think of that would make me popular or money or whatever it is. I'm not there, and yet people will say that, you know, I'm a ringleader. That things have been said behind the scenes over the years, that I'm a ringleader of people trying to break up flat earth. I was accused of that. I use a voice changer. I'm getting money. I'm trying to be popular. You know, it's like, what, if I use pardon the expression, planet are they living on? An imaginary place is a planet. It's just ridiculous what people, how far over backwards they'll bend just to make Christians the scapegoats and accuse us of everything they're doing, they're projecting. And so if anybody thinks they're better, it's certainly not us, and we're not trying to be popular. And so wouldn't you think they'd recognize that we're pursuing truth because we're doing things that cost us money, popularity, friends, good friends that we've had, they're all turning away and saying that we're giving each other a bad name. We know where our true unity lies, and it will cost you everything. And that's what we're doing because we believe it's true. And if they can't respect our personal convictions, then we certainly don't have to respect theirs, even though we've done it all this time. Those days are over, I think, at least for me. You might be away from this computer right now.
Well said. No, I just had to get reacquainted right quick. Let's see what we got here. Let me check the chat.
Let's see. What you looking at there? Water. I'm getting thirsty though, but yep. That's what Franco said. My mouth is watering. All this talk about water. I remember that song, Mr. Rich Bob. Used to sing that back in the 60s when I was a little kid. Back in the 60s.
Back in the 60s, you could call the moon, and the delay, excuse me, as I stutter, the delay from the moon would be about, it would be about shorter than the delay it took me to say the word delay as I stuttered. It would just come right back. You just call the moon there. But now, with some of these space station walks, they have about I don't know, sometimes, I don't know, what is it, 3 or 4 second delay when we contact the space station? That's 1% the distance, or is it, what, 3%? I don't know. It's not very far. It's about 1 to, 5% the distance as the moon. And there's about a 5-second delay. But on that moon, we had such advanced walkie-talkies back in 1969. Again, when you put, I can't believe look at those cars the way they were made. People have forgot about the 60s, Paula. My dad had a 1964 Cadillac. It was the last year of the Fins and the first year of the 429. It was a Coupe de Ville, so it had 2 doors. It was a hard top. It was white vinyl. It was brown on the outside. Absolutely gorgeous car. And it had a 3-speed transmission and an AM radio. AM radio. No CD, no tape, no 8-tracks weren't invented yet. And with that program, that car was made right in the middle of the Apollo space program. And that 3rd generation Cadillac was built for a few more years, and it was changed, around 1969, right at the same time. These people have no idea how gullible you'd have to be to think that we were able to do something like that in the 60s, the 40s, and we're using the rocket technology from the 40s. From the 40s, which means they go up into the air for about 30 seconds and they run out of fuel, or a minute or 3 minutes maximum. That's what they still do. The most powerful long-range rocket system, launched from an airplane, can go 120 miles to 150 miles. So let me say that again. 150 miles today is the maximum range, and that's already when it's in the air. It doesn't have to launch from the ground. You see, launching from the ground would make it use a lot more extra energy. It would actually be reduced by probably 30% of its original capability when it doesn't have to use all that energy to get up to at least Mach 1 or at least 600 miles an hour before it's launched. And this is 2017. These are scramjet systems, advanced jet engines, advanced rocket. And it's just, for you to believe that 60 years ago, they were able to go all the way to the moon, and not just go all the way to the moon, which is 3,000, what did I say earlier? It's you got 3% ISS, so you're talking 3,000% farther than we can go now. Not just that, guys, not just that, ladies and gentlemen. You're dealing with a population of people with smartphones, remember, who think they can go all the way to the moon, 1969, and not only that, they can actually get all the way back. I thought we had Newton's law that every action requires to come back at equal and opposite reactions, so that there has to be a balance here. The Saturn V rocket had about, 500,000 gallons of fuel to do that, just to get there. And as you know, ladies and gentlemen, on the moon, the Saturn V rocket doesn't make it all the way. So what do you start off with to get back here? So, it's never been about evidence. It's about just common sense. And, 60s technology, people, we have no idea what the 80s was like anymore. This was 20 years before that. So come on, let's get real.
Yeah, in the 80s, even we had little cars that would get like 40, 50 miles a gallon, little 4 speeds or 5 speeds, I think they were. And just an ordinary gas, It had cruise control. It had a radio, decent radio with FM and everything, but it got 40, 50 miles a gallon. You can't get that now. It's like they think it's awesome that if you get 30. And I was like, well, why are we going backwards on mileage when there's supposed to be a fuel crisis? The whole thing. People just have to think that even if they believe we went to the moon, it's like, why are we still driving combustion engines? Why are we still getting 20, 30 miles a gallon and calling it awesome? It's just, people have the memory of a goldfish, and that's what they go by. They use it, and now they're trying to erase the past in the conspiracy realm by saying you can't count on anything beyond a couple of generations. That's effectively burning all the books of the past, erasing all the evidence, because you can't interpret evidence anymore. It's all a lie, and they don't have to physically go get rid of it. They get rid of it in your head. That's the real Mandela effect, is convincing you that they're such liars that everything in the past is a lie, and they have a control over all of it, and therefore you're not even going to believe your own eyes. That's what that whole thing is about, that whole virtual reality. Because these people are liars, then we know that everything in the past is unreliable, And you know the saying, those who forget the past are doomed to repeat it. But hey, that happened in the past too, so that must not be true anymore. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, it clearly is the age of deceit. And another thing is when these people go to, the pseudoscientist, intellectual Jesuit hired, excuse me, pseudoscientists of the past, like, they'll always bring up Ptolemy or Copernicus, or it's like, yeah, they didn't have airplanes back then, bro. Do you know that? They didn't, that's what they even say they didn't. Maybe they had balloons. They say they couldn't get up there and just see it, because that's the thing. They had to brainwash this indoctrination system from a long time ago. It had to have its roots, and they probably had flying vehicles much longer ago, and they probably had the ability to start making them again, maybe in the past few hundred years. But they realized there was going to be a shift in a consciousness, and you couldn't do that without finding. Well, first we got to find a really big deception. So, and we can't really make flying vehicles for a while. We first got to convince everybody that they're on a ball first, and then we'll create the flying vehicles, and we'll say we went to someplace really far away from this ball so that we could get a picture of it, and then we came back, of course, and then we can allow people to see what's going on outside their windows, I guess, maybe. So that's how it all worked. That's a very long deception. Again, it honestly goes back 7,000 years. These things are not originated from man. They're originated from Satan. He gives these people these ideas. So all this, well, if this Copernicus, no, it's Satan. Sorry, thanks for playing.
And it's just I would call it not only the age of deception, but the age of gullibility and what's the word? Just complete irrationality. Because, like, for example, as there's somebody who makes the rounds in all the chat rooms and sometimes gets on panel, who said that was complaining to me that I said we got textual evidence for the Bible, and he said, but you reject the medieval art that has halos around people's heads. I'm like, yes, medieval art is not the Bible. Oh, you'd believe those earlier texts, but not these medieval art. That's where why don't you reject one and not the other? And it's like, wow, for crying out loud. It's like I'm talking Klingon to these people. I don't know. I can't go anywhere and say stuff. It's if I say the sky is blue, they'll go, oh, you're a Jesuit liar. You don't know the sky is blue. It could have been red in our past memory, and the Mandela effect changed it. Right,
and that's why that's a slippery slope, and there's 4 or 5 different slippery slopes to go down when you start getting into sloppycism. And that's the reality of it. That's why it's all similar. It's all ridiculous. It all leads back to a circular reasoning of I have no idea what I'm talking about, but I certainly want to go investigate something that's not real. Oh, is that how it works? So that's kind of, you got to, like I said, it's frightening. It's a frightening concept.
Yeah, you use virtual logic to investigate your virtual world. And if somebody uses non-virtual logic, they are stupid, and you just can't accept what they say. And so that's just how it works, and if you speak your mind, if it's not what they want to hear, then the other person who's heckling you can speak theirs, and everything's cool, and they're being tolerant. That's the kind of world we live in, where even if people aren't being malevolent and are aware that they're speaking nonsense, they're still speaking it, and they don't understand what's wrong with us, because it's like there was an old story about, I think, some guy, I forget if it was it wasn't the Man Who Would Be King, but something like that, where a guy with his sight comes into a kingdom where everybody is blind, and they actually think that eyeballs are something that have to be removed at birth because they're defective. And so this guy, tries to show how it's better to have sight and not take people's eyeballs out when they're born. And they don't believe him. They're happy the way they are, and they can't see a thing. And he can't explain to them what it means to see, and that these eyeballs grow into your head because you're supposed to be able to use them. But it's just that kind of a world where nothing we see makes any sense to them. In fact, they treat the Bible that lets us see these things as a defect, and they want to get rid of it, and they think it should be taken out. And there's just no way to talk to people anymore. Once they have adapted this nonsense approach to life, and this make it up as you go along virtual reality, there's just nothing you can say to that person.
Well said. Look at Mr. Rich Bob says it's always chemtrail here. Let's see. No, that's Victoria. Okay, what did you say, Mr. Bob? Is shoving all into their eyes. An all. Find out what an all is. Go ahead and Google that.
Yeah, I know what it is. That would hurt. Of course, anything you shove into
it does. It does it all. Yeah, it does it all. Yep.
I see what you did there.
Yeah, that's a good one. Oops. Can't see the sun anymore either. You know what, you guys? They picked one place. One of the places they picked to have clear skies is here, just north of Mexico. I honestly get spoiled every single night with a clear sky. I see all the constellations. It's been pretty amazing. But I'm at 4,000 feet elevation as well, so a little bit of an advantage there. And that's got to be why they built that Lucifer Observatory that they can't use for some reason. But we can't get any real pictures of it. I'd love to see what these stars look like with a 3,000-pound telescope. Show me the nice wavy iridescent colors and rainbow flashes of these stars. They know better. They better not point that thing at those stars, because you're going to see some sort of who knows what enter your number dimensional being going on. I mean, I did this about 8 months ago. I took a binoculars to one, and I've never seen anything like it. I mean, it went from white to gold to you name it. If it's a color that's bright and shiny, it was repetitive. And I think it was Venus, they called it. It was one of these, wandering stars. It's one of the things that are hard to keep up with, are the wandering stars, but for sure, it was certainly one of them. And it looked like it was a spotlight about 50 miles away. It looked like it was right there. I don't know. Like it had to be thousands of miles away, I guess, but it was so massive and so big. It looked like it was just over there.
Yeah. Before I really, I don't know how many years ago it was, we would see Sirius flashing like you wouldn't believe on the low southern horizon at night, just below. If anybody doesn't know, you can find it just below. If you can find the Orion constellation, it's pretty easy to find. It's below and to the left of that. And it flashes blue and red, very bright, very fast, like a strobe light. And it's like, why? That is not just atmospheric distortion. I mean, you can't explain it that way at all. And the planets never do that. People used to say, oh, you can tell planets from stars, when I was, decades and decades ago. You can tell planets from stars by the fact that planets don't twinkle. I was like, what could possibly explain that? If it's the atmosphere that makes the stars twinkle, aren't the planets in the atmosphere? And, after a while, you just stop asking questions. You're not going to get answers. So it runs deep and it runs long, and I don't know what to do about it. It's getting worse instead of better.
Yeah, and they don't want you to. I mean, I would just like to borrow somebody's telescope out there. There's a few people I know with these great big ones that just don't want to hear that F word, and I'm not going to be able to borrow their telescope. I really wish I could. It's funny because the people that buy them, they just sit and collect dust. If you're a heliocentric believer, a lot of the chat's talking about the Sorry, I just had to mute for a second. A lot of the chat's talking about this car thing going on here about Henry Ford and the hemp cars and this and that. And that always makes me just talk about the fact that we don't even need gasoline the way we use it as it is. So the whole oil thing is a massive deception, and that's part of what they use as a crutch for the car industry. But that being said, the engine isn't the problem. The engines can run on water, some on vegetable oil, some on peanut oil, things like that. And all this technology was maxed out. This is the big deal, is that all this technology was absolutely maxed out when it came to the internal combustion engine in 1966. Absolutely maxed out, never been better. And that can be proven because all top fuel dragsters have to use a 1966 design. Of course, Dodge engine, the 426 Hemi design, that was it. Once they came up with when Dodge came up with the 426 Hemi, that was it. It was the end of who can build the best engine. That was it. It murdered the entire racing industry. They had to change these rules. They had to ban Chrysler. They had to reduce the displacement side. They had to make all these rules because it was so dominant. So every manufacturer now that wanted to run down the track really quick just basically had to copy it. There was no other option. So this 1966 was maximized. Remember, this is
3 years before the so-called moon landing. So everything, as far as history can even look back to, they even admit the most advanced technology was maxed out 60 years ago. Everything except what? The microchip, which is probably, and the whatever we're using when our laptops, the computer systems, that's the only thing that's changed in the last 60 years. That's it. That's it. The most advanced aircraft that ever lived, want me to prove this, is the SR-71 Blackbird. It was designed in the late 50s. It was initially called the YF-12. This is 60 years ago. Nothing has ever broken those records. I mean, you got to let that sink in a little bit. There's never been anything, the F-22, you name it, even those beautiful, amazing Russian aircraft never could break the record of that SR-71 Blackbird. It's maxed out. We maxed out on all technology 60 years ago. And back to the Hemi, it turns out I always why is that word significant? Because we live under a hemisphere. There's only one hemisphere, though, not two hemispheres. We don't live on a hemisphere. We live under the hemisphere. It's the tent, also known as the firmament. So that's the relevance.
That SR-71, I remember reading about that in the 70s, I think, when we used to get Reader's Digest. There was no internet or anything, and I thought, wow, this is an awesome airplane, and how fast it would go and everything. And then we would, decades later, we visited the Air Force Museum, and they had a model of it. Of course, it says don't touch. Of course, I had to touch it. It felt like cardboard. It was just black painted cardboard. It was just a mock-up of the SR-71. Of course, they would never put the real thing there. And then people argue about, we're going to get the space shuttle at our museum. It's like, no, you're not. You're getting a mock-up. Anyway, the seats in it were huge, and we're like, oh, they're wearing spacesuits because they're going up so high. Why are they wearing spacesuits? And then you read about the fact that, I read this article years and years ago about how fast it would go, and every airplane in the museum said maximum speed was Mach 3. And I'm like, no, I know better than that, and I don't even know anything about airplanes, and I know that plane went way faster than Mach 3. They're lying through their teeth about every one of those exhibits, what they did or anything. Of course, we saw the spindly leg tweaker shelter moonlander there too, and all sorts of things. But there was something else I was going to mention. Oh, about telescopes. I wonder if there's some way we could use some lighter weight materials to build a big telescope. We're trying to minimize distortion, but that's the hard part, is that distortion issue, because those big scopes, they take some seriously high technology so that you don't get the weight of the glass or whatever you're using doesn't distort the image and get flattened. And there's all sorts of things you have to do to even make a half-decent small scope. You can make a crude one, but it's really hard to make a big one. They're always reserving that stuff for themselves, just like, and I have to think with the chips, the only thing they give us, because that's excellent spyware, that's wearable jewelry spyware. They used to, the old movies you'd watch about, hidden microphones and stuff that they would put into plants and little tiny cameras that they would take pictures of documents with. And now it's like, they don't even need to bug everything. We do it to ourselves. I think that's the only reason they give us that technology.
Oh yeah, it's always tied to something satanic, no doubt. And yeah, James says it leaked like a sieve on the ground. That's absolutely true. And the reason it was able to, and I've heard a lot of flat earthers make really, the crutch of flat earthers is the ignorance, in any group. It's always the problem. But these people making these videos about how the SR-71 Blackbird couldn't reach those speeds because it leaked. No. You're wrong. Actually, when it reached those speeds and entropy kicks in because of the friction of the air, the cast iron and titanium would flex and actually seal the tanks at altitude, at speeds, because it would get so hot, it would actually prevent it from leaking. And when it was on the ground, it would leak. So that's why the first thing it had to do when it got in the air was to do a mid-air refueling, which is extremely difficult. When I was doing flight simulators, that was the hardest thing I've ever had to do in my entire landing on an aircraft carrier. To me, was twice as easy as doing this mid-air refueling deal. Let me tell you right now, if that's that hard, and you want to talk about lunar landers, please, people, you got to get over it. I'm sorry. It's way harder than a helicopter as far as all that rocket garbage is landing on the moon. That completely destroyed that theory.
But yeah, when flat earthers say these claims, the Glober's going to say, "Oh, see how stupid they are," and they're going to discredit your entire statement. So these people, these flat earthers out there making these videos, they got to be careful. Like, the big conundrum they talk about as far as G-forces, like, oh my goodness, the space shuttle makes 170,000 pounds of thrust. They would be feeling 170 Gs. Well, wait a minute. Yeah, that's if there was no weight to the space shuttle, genius. Okay, the space shuttle is compensating the weight of over 100,000 tons. I mean, it's literally like ridiculous. It's measured in, I think, literally, is it thousands of tons? I mean, the fuel is thousands of pounds. I don't know if it's tons. The numbers are staggering. I just don't. It's been so long. I never was really into the space shuttle. I was an airplane geek. I remember having the model my grandfather gave me. He worked at Lockheed Martin. What a coincidence! And showed me the model of the space shuttle on top. The 747. That big scam. Figured out why they did that. Anybody wants to ask about that 747, space shuttle scam? Why is the 747 hauling the space shuttle? Well, that's how they re-entered to make it look like they came back from space. Period. End of story. That's what they used to make the shuttle come out. The shuttle didn't take off from, the moon or the space station, Mir. Anybody remember that one? Mandela people,
Mm-hmm.
Mir space station. Yeah, let that sink in for a second. So when you're saying these things, it's like, let's say, look, an F-18 Hornet produces 10,000 pounds of thrust and it pulls 9 Gs. And I'm thinking, yes, and that's not because of the thrust of the engine. That's because the plane is making a drastic maneuver. It's turning really hard, and an object that's in motion tends to stay in motion unless interrupted. Well, you're interrupting the motion because you're trying to turn at 420 miles an hour, and guess what happens? You feel the G-forces. In fact, you can turn your engines off sometimes in some planes and pull even harder because you're making a much more drastic maneuver. The engines are actually forcing you to stay in flight in a more directional path, and they're actually decreasing your angle of attack. The higher the angle of the attack, the more G-forces you are going to feel. The space shuttle weighs 1 million pounds, so it has to create 1 million pounds of force to get up. But it's not going to be even probably 3 or 4 Gs. It's pushing on all that weight. The F-8, and by the way, when they said this about the F-18, no, that's one engine. The F-18 has 2 engines. So the flat earther made a video about the F-18 saying it has this when it's actually twice that. So anytime they do that, you're going to discredit your entire presentation. And that's what I would do 20 years ago if I was a Glover. I would see that mistake and go, oh, these dumb flat earthers don't even know this plane has 2 engines, or these dumb flat don't even know. And that's how these people lose the battle in their ignorance, because they won't put the research in. So there is a lot of BS out there. There is a lot of stupid things that people are just ignorant about, and they make their mistakes, and there's not a lot of cleaning up. It's not going to happen. There's only one truth anyway. But I've noticed that over the past, few years, that there is a lot of stupid information out there that, and you're not talking about the shape of the earth, for one, and 2, now you're making yourself look stupid. And then they're just going to throw your entire presentation out the window. It's just like when people try to discredit Paula about the usage of a word, their excuse is, oh, there's no J's in the Bible. So, or something like that. It's very similar. Anything can discredit your entire presentation if you make a big mistake like that, especially when the information is readily available.
Yeah, we were talking about what's called pseudo forces when you talk about the plane having to overcome the way it was going. And people hear the word pseudo force and go, oh, that's a fake thing. This is something, another lie of theirs, this pseudo force. It's not real force. It's like, geez. At least I went to school. And I took physics classes, and a pseudo force is a real thing. It's like if you're in a car and you're going a certain way, and your car tries to turn to one side, your body inside the car, which is not attached to the car, will try to keep going straight. And so you feel like something is pushing you sideways. It feels like a force, but it's an anti-force, a pseudo-force, because you're not going the way nature wants you to go anymore. You're overcoming it and interrupting it, and that's why it's called a pseudo-force. But people have disparaged classic education so hard that they believe it's better to be ignorant and to reinvent every wheel because it's evil and they're afraid of it. That's throwing the baby out with the bathwater and then shooting the bathtub. I mean, they just are afraid of knowledge now. And like I said, this is a more effective book burning than anything that's ever been done in the past, is you just virtually burn the books. It's all in your head that these things are evil. Books are evil. Past history is evil. Documents are evil. Anything that isn't right in front of your eyes is evil. And even then, on one hand, if it's earth-shaped, you're supposed to believe your eyes. If it's not earth-shaped, you can't believe your eyes. And it's evil to believe your eyes. And now they're afraid of Christians too. It's like, this is the age of fear. I guess you could add to the list of what age this is, because they're afraid of knowledge and study. I mean, the vast majority of what you hear, at least in the college level, is practical knowledge, because it's supposedly a major that you chose and stuff that's interesting. And it's real stuff that you can do experiments with, and you can think about it. And, stuff I went to was not biology or anything, so I didn't have to worry about too much indoctrination with interpretations of how that came to be, like the evolution of the tooth or some ridiculous thing. But things the way they are, practical engineering stuff that you can test and predict and make and use and alter so that it will do something new that you want it to do. That's valid education, learning to read and write. Everybody learned to read and write in a school of some sort, by ways that people learned to read and write for thousands of years, by studying, learning from somebody who invented it or got it passed down to them. But this habit of throwing out every bit of education because so much of it is bad. I mean, look at how corrupt even the flat earth movement is. Let's throw the whole thing out by their own reasoning. And the sad part is the ball earthers are worse. So they just choose to believe a lie, that, the interpretation lie, the evolution part and the ball earth part and the Big Bang part. And I just, I'm hardest on my own people. And that's why I've been, spending so many years just talking about what Christians are doing wrong to make us look bad and to make the Bible look bad. And then people still make, they even though I try to explain, it's like that, well, I know you've heard this from other Christians. I disagree. This is what I think. And they think, yeah, that makes sense. But still, all of Christianity, the Bible, and Jesus is wrong because of those other people. I've just had it with all that. And I'm content now to just stay with sensible people of like mind that actually want to find the truth and aren't afraid to find it, than to try to convince anybody anymore. It's just not worth it.
Yeah, and for the haters don't even allow Christians to defend themselves. And usually every time they're lying about Christianity or the Bible, there's almost never a Christian on the panel. And coincidentally, if a Christian is, which is super rare, that Christian usually doesn't say anything anyway. So across the board, that's why it's called a deception. If you're being fake, if for some reason that you're going to allow people to talk about something like that, that's a lot more important than any of God's creation. He says not to worship the creation, right? So
Exactly.
there's a much bigger step above anything here in the long run. At the final end of this marathon, the one where we started with the flat earth and didn't realize there was a race to run, and then we said, oh baby, let's go. And we picked up that flat earth key and left everybody behind that's not even sure if it's a flat earth, as they're scratching their heads looking for a map. Well, the end of that road, of course, for many of us, we got to extremely quick. We just got right to it with Jesus Christ. And that's what it's all about. And this truth, again, isn't for everybody. And this tool is certainly big on people that are within this world. Yeah, if you're still in this world, those people need to know the shape of the world they're in. And that's a big deal for people that don't know any of the truth, which is that they're not an animal, which is that they're a special creation, which is that they're literally in the center of the literal spoken word of God. So that might matter. That might be a big deal. To me, it was extremely big. And I have met many families that I have sent on their way, changing them to the realization of this biblical truth, changing them from Bible scoffers to Bible believers. And that's all I was looking to do. That was the most important thing. So it absolutely does work and is absolutely imperative in some instances. But going back to the scoffers, like I said, these people aren't real flat earthers anyway. They don't even know what's really flat. They talk about debating and they talk about how we can now sell a flat earth product or something like that, usually, or making money and stuff. And I'm not against all that, but there's a wide range in there, a wide range of nonsense, I guess, for lack of a better term, and a wide range of egos and isms and itises and belief systems that are anti-truth. There is no truth movement. That is a fraudulent statement. There was never a truth movement. It's fictitious. It was how Satan hides things, hide the ultimate truth. So it turns out that the truth movement is a fraud. just like every part of the truth that's a movement that's a fraud, that doesn't involve the biblical reality that puts everything together, and that is actually the only truth. That's the reality. And that's why this is an entire conflict, this entire war that is now being raged, and we are at full scale DEFCON 1. We're only at 1, so we can relax. But the fact of the matter is that we are in it now, and there's no going back. We don't go. It's not going to go back to 0. I don't think. I think we're going to be in 1, and we're going to continue to go along, and it's going to get interesting. And that's funny. Teal recognized Raw in the chat. Yeah, that's pretty good. Victoria earlier said, "Hi, my name is Victoria, and I'm a sinner." That was pretty good. Yeah, there is no truth movement. There's only one truth. If that movement isn't, it's not. We're not in the truth movement. We might have thought we were. We thought we were the truth. We thought we were flat earthers. That's not our title. Yeah, if you're talking, I'm talking to a noob on the street, and I want to really get somebody going in a timely fashion. Yeah, hey, I'm a flat earther. So are you sure? Blah blah blah. Hey, what do you think of that? I'm okay. That's great shock value in the short term, but in the long run, that's not our title. And our title is biblical believers or Christians for the most part. And a lot of people have struggled with that name, but it's got to be Bible centered, or it's not truth anyway. And again, that's why Satan is attacking this flat earth, because it is a biblical relevance. It's a biblical truth. It's 100% tied to Christianity. That's our flat earth. So that's why there's all these scoffers and people coming in the name of truth, if you notice. And that is exactly where this deception is right now. And you know what? It's awesome because we figured it out. It took me a little while, but we're here now and we know. And that was what it was all about, was knowing the truth.
Yeah, we're truth finders, not just truth seekers. And that's, I'll never understand that, why they think it's so horrible to say that you found the truth. Like, why are you seeking if you're not allowed to find it? Or it's just, I get it, it's just Christians are not allowed to find the truth. So I guess Pillbox has to go do something for a second. Not sure how much longer we'll go. It's been, let's see, when did we start? It was close to 7 p.m. here, I think. That's not too bad, but let's see, we're mentioning the rapture in the chat. Yeah, I've got a whole bunch of material on that, both video and in writing. So this is just another one of those things. It's not a hill to die on as far as that goes. The salvation is still by faith, but we know that I think none of the views can be ruled out completely, but that really hasn't been the focus of the Revelation series. It's been more just looking at the book and not even going very deep. And I think Pillbox is back now, and he's ready to do the outro. So I think we're about ready to close down.
Oh, am I? I guess I am. Now that you mention it, yes, I guess I am. Alrighty.
Okay, it doesn't matter.
Well, let's see what we got here. No, we are. No, absolutely. You called it. We can't go back and listen. I'm not going to argue with you, Paula. Okay, don't try to start a fight with me. I'm just kidding. Okay. full armor. Let me see what we got on the chat right quick. All right. So yeah, I'll just do about 10 seconds if you see that message right there. So yeah, let's see what we got here. Full armor. I agree about that. Yes. Phil Summers, I appreciate your time. Very well done with you ladies today. Victoria, God bless you as usual. Chow Young Cat, you are the man, bro. I appreciate you. Raw 5069, man. I really appreciate seeing you, brother. We got to talk very soon. Let's see who else. James Higgs Boson. Love that guy too. Scott, I've seen you more and more, buddy. You're doing very well. Very well, Scott. I like your attitude, kid. What happened to that Daniel 12? You better tell someone it's a flat earth. Let me tell you right now. Man, Victoria, Sergeant Victoria. Let's see the time right quick. 7:31 west of the Rockies, south of the 33rd parallel. This is Flat Earth Elected. This is the end of the internet. The Bible is the only truth. There is only one truth. This is the only Flat Earth group that I know. I don't know about you guys. Just remember, for time in the world might not ever stand still. For entropy is the lore of life since the inception of Satan into the Garden of Eden. For those who only look to the past or the present are certain to miss
the revelation. Thank you very much, guys. It's been a lot of fun. I'll see you again on the Red October.